I just pressed the let's go live button, and you know what that means? We've got to wait for the tubes to connect themselves all across the fruited plain of the internet before we go ahead and get started. It's a beautiful Monday back. I hope you had an amazing weekend. I see that we're alive and well over on the YouTubes. Looks like our Telegram is up. Hello to our friends on Rumble. And let's make sure that the locals is firing up as well before we go ahead and get started. I do believe that it's kicking off here soon. Sometimes locals takes a minute or two. Let's just make sure. Come on, locals. What's going on over there? There it is. It had a case of the Mondays. The locals had a case of the Mondays. But it's working. That's great news. That means we can go ahead and get started. So let's do it, shall we? Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live, the show that spotlights misconduct involving police, prosecutors, and politicians. My name is Robert Gouveia. I am a criminal defense attorney. And today, we're talking about Donald Trump's motion to dismiss the big Fani, Georgia RICO case. We're going over to Georgia to see what's happening there. It's been some time since we've seen what's up there, but we've got a big one today, and we're going to hit the highlights on it. It's a 67-ish pager filing, and it's a good one. It's a lot of the same issues that we saw with the January 6th case, which, of course, Donald Trump filed a very similar motion to dismiss in Judge Chutkan's courtroom. But this is a state court, and so we also have a little bit of Supremacy Clause goodness thrown in there, saying, hey, Fani, you can't usurp the federal government. And Lord knows we hate that Federal Supremacy Clause, but it might serve us well here today. So we'll talk about that. Nancy Pelosi says states should be able to do whatever they want. Federal Constitution be damned. So we'll hear what she says. Trump reacted to Colorado accepting the case. We know that one state is trying to disenfranchise him. Crazy Eyes Jena Griswold does not want Donald Trump on the ballot. And she's not worried about disenfranchising, her entire state of Colorado. So we'll see what's happening with her. And then I've got a clip from Mayor Muriel Bowser, who is the mayor of Washington, D.C. And she says Trump must come off the ballot. And she was there. Of course, we know that she was the person who rejected the National Guard on January 4th, I think it was, because she didn't want him there because maybe she wanted the January 6th event to happen. So all of these people just kind of colluding together against Trump, but he's filing a motion to dismiss, and the motion to dismiss based on presidential immunity, that's got some teeth. That one's going to the Supreme Court, we expect. So we'll get into that all in the first segment. Then we're going to turn our attention. Last week, we had this debate with Jack Smith. Remember, Trump filed a motion to hold him basically in contempt of court, said that he was continuing to file disclosures, drop disclosures off at the Trump defense. He was also continuing to file motions in limine, these preliminary motions before the trial starts. This is all happening in Judge Chutkan's courtroom. And we're scratching our heads here saying, that's a little bit strange because we know the case is on appeal. And once a case is on appeal, everything is held in abeyance, even according to Judge Chutkan's own order. So why is Jack Smith filing stuff if the order says everything is stayed? Well, Trump said, you're in trouble, buddy. We want you to be held in contempt. Jack Smith responded to that. We'll take a look at what is inside today. Donald Trump was also over on Truth Social slamming this guy. You remember Andrew Weissmann, and, he's been after Trump for years now, was working with the other special counsel. And so we'll hear what he had to say about this, saying that Trump is using bad words. He's just using a bunch of different adverbs and different parts of grammar that Weissmann doesn't like. And then we'll see former Defense Secretary Mark Esper use a lot of those same words, right? It's all just stupid platitudes that these guys use on a daily basis. So we'll see what's going on there. And then we've got Raskin. I think we'll listen to Raskin. Oh yeah, Raskin and Schiff. I forgot about these two. A couple of knuckleheads here lying to us about everything. I found some clips of them. Then in our third segment, we're going to talk about Ashli Babbitt. Her estate is now suing the federal government. You know this woman, the one person who was shot and killed on January 6th. by the Capitol Police. She and her family have now filed a lawsuit against the federal government. And so the federal government is going to be responding at some point, I'm sure of it, but we're going to go through the filing. And this comes after the MSNBC people are crying, talking to the other cops, the other J6ers. You can see this is the Babbitt filing. It is a 32-pager, so we will take a look at that and see what is inside. MSNBC crying for the January 6ers, and we'll see what they say. Mike Pence is also saying that he trusts the FBI, if you can believe that, which I don't know why anybody would, but he does. Mike Pence, well, you know, I take him at their word is what he's going. I take him at their word. Thanks, Mike. Oh, gosh. So we'll see what he says. And then Donald Trump was calling the J6ers hostages, because that's what they are. They're political prisoners being held by an oppositional political party called the Democrats. And we'll go through this. We also have Elise Stefanik calling them hostages as well. And I'm liking where this is going. So we're going to get into all of that in the third segment and more, and see what the Ashli Babbitt estate has to say. And of course, there's a lot to get into. This morning, we had a beautiful members only stream. We talked about Lloyd Austin, you know, wherever that dude is. We talked about AOC wanting amnesty. We talked about the new spending bill that Mike Johnson is like, this sounds good. And we talked a lot about a ton of stuff. And we're going over there to watchingthewatchers.locals.com for our members only after party as soon as we're done here, wrapping up here. We really try to deliver for our members. We do streams in the morning. We do Saturday shows. We got some fun stuff cooking with our new lodge. And so we're grateful for your support at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We'll see you back over there as soon as we are done here. But before we get into the meat and potatoes, my friends, I got to ask whether or not you have a VPN service, because you got to be protected when you're on the internet. And we're going to be very thankful to our supporters of today's show, Private Internet Access. It's important to stay protected on the internet, my friends, and Private Internet Access will help you do that. Private Internet Access is a VPN service that creates an encrypted tunnel for you when you browse the web, so that people on the same network as you can't snoop in and see what you're doing. And that's awesome. But what I also love about a VPN is that it allows you to change your IP address to one of over 90 countries around the world. This lets you bypass geographic restrictions on certain websites like Netflix that will often limit movies or TV shows like one of my favorites, The Office, and they do that based on your region, meaning that when you change your region, you get access to additional content you might not otherwise see. PIA also gets you around website geo restrictions. For example, Canadians now can't access Facebook News and Google News due to the controversial BC-18 bill, but with PIA, they can. And what I like most about Private Internet Access is that they are the world's most transparent VPN provider. With over 30 million downloads and a no logs policy means they never record or store user data. All this has been verified by a third-party audit from Deloitte and successfully defended in court in litigation. And now, Private Internet Access allows you to protect all your devices with just one subscription, so you can protect your whole household in one go. Super simple. So let's get you a VPN from Private Internet Access. Go to www.piavpn.com/Robert and you'll get 83% off and 4 months free when you sign up for a 2-year plan. Be sure to use my link for a major discount on this initial offer, and my friends, will see you at piavpn.com/Robert. All right, my friends, and thank you for supporting those who support our show. And of course, we want you to stay protected out there on the interwebs. Link is down in the description below. Make sure you check them out and sign up. Don't forget to use our code. Okay, so without any further ado, let's get right into the meat and potatoes on the show here today. Donald Trump submits a motion to dismiss his Georgia case, this one brought by Big Fani Willis, the RICO charges that really led to nothing so far. We had Sidney Powell take a guilty plea, but led to no conviction since it's a diversion agreement. Same thing with Sidney Powell, Jena Ellis, and others who were there, Kenneth Chesebro. But now Trump is saying, you know, my case should be entirely dismissed due to presidential immunity and due to the Supremacy Clause. And we're back down at a state court level. And so we know that these issues are already on appeal in the DC circuit. So the immunity issue and double jeopardy issue, by the way, are also on appeal in the DC Circuit going to the Court of Appeals. And so there's some overlapping issues between presidential immunity at the state level and presidential immunity at the federal level. But supremacy clause is a new argument that we're going to take a look at. So all this is happening. Nancy Pelosi says, really, the federal Constitution doesn't matter all that much, and we can really just go state by state, not that big of a deal. And then we'll check in with Crazy Eyes Griswold and Muriel Bowser, the woman who denied the National Guard on January 6th when Trump said, hey, maybe we secure the premises a little bit more thoroughly. But she said no, go figure. Now we're going to go into this one. The motion to dismiss by Donald Trump, filed in the state of Georgia, Fulton County, big Fani Willis's jurisdiction. The judge's name is Judge Scott McAfee. We've seen a lot of him here. Trump's team writes, the motion to dismiss the indictment based on presidential and supremacy clause immunity and a supporting memorandum of law. Now, they tell us in the introduction, Judge McAfee, Georgia, the people of America, from 1789 to 2023, no president ever faced criminal prosecution for acts committed while in office. Well, they didn't have a Trump for all those years and a psychopathic Democratic Party. That unbroken historic tradition of presidential immunity is rooted in the separation of powers and the text of the Constitution. That's why it didn't happen. Now, in the case called Nixon versus Fitzgerald, the Supreme Court of the United States held that a former president, quote, has absolute presidential immunity from civil damages for acts within the outer perimeter of his official responsibility. Already decided. 1982, the case is called Nixon. And in this lawsuit, in this filing, they call it Fitzgerald. Now, the same immunity that applied in civil cases also shields President Trump from criminal prosecutions, also for acts within the outer perimeter of his official duties. Now, the indictment in this case charges President Trump for acts that lie at the heart of his official responsibilities as president. And so the indictment is barred by presidential immunity, and it should be dismissed with prejudice and never come back again. They argue the president's absolute immunity shields him from criminal prosecution as well as a civil suit, saying, indeed, immunity from prosecution is most central to the concept of immunity. Presidential immunity from criminal prosecution for official acts has deep roots in the separation of powers and the principles of federalism, just like Fitzgerald, the Nixon case, held. The text of the Constitution and early authorities, they also confirm that the exclusive method to proceed against a president for crimes committed while in office is impeachment. And so backing up just a minute, when we see this sentence freaks a lot of people out. They say, wait a minute, what? Huh? The president is shielded from criminal prosecution. He has absolute immunity? Huh? And there are limiting principles on that, obviously. Okay, it's for stuff that happens within the outer perimeter of his official duties while he's in office. And if you think that something within those confines was criminal, impeach him and do it quickly. And we'll know that it's not a political hatchet job led by Nancy Pelosi and a fake illegally constituted J6 committee when the Senate, the cooling saucer of America, says overwhelmingly, yeah, this is not political. This dude's a criminal. And they vote to actually convict. That didn't happen here. But that's how it's supposed to work. And that would happen, okay, if somebody did something horrendous that was actually a crime, unlike what we have in this case with Trump. Early authorities like Chief Justice John Marshall and Justice Story, they recognize that the president's official acts are not subject to examination by some Secretary of State, by some federal court. They don't get to decide, that's an insurrection because I don't like Trump. It's a separation of powers. You don't get to do that. Historical practice over 234 years that they threw down the gutter confirms that the power to indict a current or former president for official acts does not exist. Otherwise, somebody would have done it. Now, the Supreme Court's analogous immunity doctrines, including presidential immunity from civil suit, we've got legislative immunity, we've got absolute judicial immunity. They confirm the president is also immune for criminal prosecution for official acts. Such immunity is particularly appropriate for the president because the presidency involves especially sensitive duties, requires bold and unhesitating action, and can be crippled by the threat of other politically motivated prosecutions by prosecutors who are partisan hacks. The acts alleged in this indictment against Donald Trump, it's pretty obvious. Those acts that you say are criminal, Fani, they lie within the outer perimeter of the president's official duties. And for this diagram, we always like to go to the angeron, the areola. And if Trump's duties, if he does it within the confines here, right at the tip, that's okay. But if Trump's actions are outside the outer perimeter, then they're not protected by presidential immunity. If he has all these acts out here, not protected, okay? But if Trump acts inside the outer perimeter of his presidential duties, that is still okay. Okay, he is within the areola and he is within the outer perimeter and he's good. Now, if he steps out of that, then the presidential immunity, you would argue, doesn't apply. You would impeach him immediately. And that would be the end of it. Now, in fact, they lie at the very heart of the presidential responsibility. Making statements to the public on matters of national concern, which is what Trump was doing, especially matters that involve federal interest, like the administration of election, that's his job. Talking to the DOJ is the quintessential exercise of his authority under the Take Care Clause. And communicating with state officials, the same thing. He's just urging them, exercise your official responsibilities. Don't screw it up. Urging Vice President Pence and Congress to do their official responsibilities, like to do their jobs that's consistent with the public good, that's totally appropriate. And he can also organize slates of electors to exercise their responsibilities. All of that is within his duties. So presidential immunity applies regardless of subjective intent as well. They say the allegation of malicious and corrupt motives, which is not even present here, does not affect immunity. So Jack Smith says, well, Trump did it with a bad motive. Trump did it because he is corrupt. And they say, well, that's not the standard here. That's not how immunity works. Just because you say that, the motive is immaterial. You can't just claim that because everybody would just claim that. Immunity protects a public official from allegations that he or she also made false statements in the course of official duties. And they do that to protect them against a constant onslaught, a barrage of assaults, of complaints and things. So the conduct charge in the indictment, and they're citing a Supreme Court case law for that, it falls under presidential immunity. And so therefore, this entire indictment, Fani, must be dismissed. Now, what we're going to do is fast forward through the allegations in the indictment because we're familiar with these. We've read this indictment many times. Trump does not admit the truth to any of this garbage. Rather, we're just reiterating this so that you recall what's happening here, Judge McAfee. Saying the indictment charges that Trump took a series of actions, 5 categories. We'll detail those now. Public statements that he made. His free speech was illegal. He talked to the DOJ, which was his agency. That was also illegal. He talked to people investigating election fraud. That's a crime, according to deranged Jack Smith. He talked to state officials. Oh, no. He talked to Mike Pence. Oh, no. And somehow he participated organizing contingent slates of electors. Wow. Now, all of that was to convince Mike Pence to exercise his authority in Trump's favor. Giant conspiracy. All right, so all that sounds like, presidential obligations. But they say first, the indictment says that Trump, while he was the president, he made a long series of public statements, blah, blah, blah. Right here, tweets posted on Twitter. They called that his speech was, quote, an overt act in furtherance of the conspiracy. Here, this is what Fani's saying. He posted a tweet about Georgia election fraud. He talked about the Georgia legislature. He posted another tweet in this one. You can see here, he also talked about certifications and blah, blah. Okay, subsection B, we know this one. Now talking to the DOJ. Yes, okay, he talked to acting attorney general, Fani. How criminal is that? Communications with state officials. He apparently called someone in Georgia. He called people in Pennsylvania. He called people all over the place. The president pro tem of Georgia. Bunch of conversations. Arizona. Okay, Trump placed a phone call to the Speaker of the House in Arizona. Great. Now, the indictment also says he talked to Mike Pence. Okay, fast forwarding through that, we know he did talk to Mike Pence about this, and he also talked with other electors. Trump urged Mike Pence to reject the slates of presidential electors or return them to the state legislatures, which all was within Mike Pence's ceremony. It wasn't ceremonial at the time. It's now been made ceremonial, but Mike Pence had a role to play, and he was there as kind of the gatekeeper. And our decision, our analysis back at the time was not that Mike Pence could just pick which ones worked, but that he could reject them and he could turn it back over to the House or turn it back over to the state legislatures, right? In a depending on the mechanics of how that it all went down. But it was a long. We went analyze this a lot prior to the 2020 election, and I was never of the position that Mike Pence could say, these are ours. But certainly that he could reject them and say, these, I've got two things here. I've got questions about this, and return it back, and the House could debate it. We know that Ted Cruz was coming out here like right in the middle of objecting and proposing an alternative solution here. So all of that, right, they fixed after the fact. For them, they said Mike Pence can't do any of that. But back at the time, of course, he could, which is why they changed it after the fact. So we know that, okay, the 5 categories. Fani charges all of them. Trump's going to prison based on all of that. But they say, no, not so fast, Big Fani Willis, who is the biggest DA in Fulton County, Georgia, which is a huge county in Georgia. I think the biggest county in Georgia, which is why we call her Big Fani, because she's the biggest prosecutor there. So President Trump's prosecution, they say, to Judge McAfee, also telling this to Fani, is barred. Why? Presidential immunity. And we're going to see that we have a lot of case law here. So we're just going to fast forward through most of this. Lots of case law from Fitzgerald. This one's from the Supreme Court, 1949, saying all of these things consider immunity here. First, Fitzgerald explains this. And they say the logic also mirrors a lot of things. But when we get through all of the case law, let's apply it to this case here. They say these concerns that we just detailed for you have special force in this case, where a local prosecutor called Fani, answerable only to a small subset of the United States electorate, which is Fulton County, she has filed charges seeking to second-guess the official actions of the President of the United States. So one local prosecutor can just say, I'm going to go take this person out. Allowing these state and local officials to hamstring federal executive power threatens the principles of federalism and the vertical separation of powers between the federal government and the states. They say there is no healthy balance of power between the states and the federal government when you can just have any locally elected Fani in the country. We've got another one called Tishy, including those elected in enclaves of profound hostility to the chief executive, like New York or Fulton County. They have the authority to haul the president into court on criminal charges for his official acts. It's insanity. They write, no, on the contrary, the Constitution guarantees the entire independence of the general government from the control of any of the respective states. It's a division of federal and state power that provides double security to the rights of the people. And they say this is no mere empty threat. If there's a difference here, the current Fulton County, Georgia indictment of President Trump, what this does is threatens to open the floodgates of politically motivated criminal prosecutions of virtually every future president. We'll see. Yeah, I might want to become a prosecutor again. Not again, but, in the future. There are more than 2,300 local prosecutors and district attorneys in this country. The prosecutors represent and are only answerable to local interests. And that allowance would overlook the national communal character of the presidency. They don't care. The presidency implicates a national interest and continues and constitutes a single head that everybody looks to. If a sitting president in some intensely unpopular district can just be targeted, then that is going to be an alluring and effective electoral strategy. But it would undermine our entire government. And we cannot allow that to happen here. Every future presidential administration, and this will we'll have to deal with this, and this will usher in a new era of political recrimination and division. They say here, the only way to move this forward is with impeachment and conviction in the Senate. This one's obvious. The concept of presidential immunity from criminal prosecution is also rooted in the text of the Constitution. For example, the impeachment judgment clause says that the president may be charged by indictment only in cases where he's been convicted by the Senate. Trump was acquitted by the Senate for the same conduct that Fani is charging here. And so he retains immunity based on that. They tell us, the impeachment judgment clause provides that judgment in cases of impeachment shall not extend further than to removal from office, and that the party, quote, convicted with an ED shall nevertheless be liable and subject to removal. Hamilton explained this. We've read a lot of this. James Wilson explained this. We read a lot of that. And the Supreme Court has applied this concept to federal judges, saying judges of these courts can only be reached, they wrote this in 1871 in the U.S. Supreme Court, by public prosecution in the form of impeachment, and then after the impeachment by other forms as the law prescribes. Saying in this case, President Trump is not a party convicted in an impeachment trial by the Senate. In fact, he was acquitted. And so therefore, he remains immune from prosecution. Now, we go back a ways to a case we talk a lot about here, Marbury versus Madison, saying that courts cannot second guess the presidential duties. In cases involving president duties, whatever opinion may be entertained of the matter, there is no power to control the discretion of the presidency. If the courts could substitute their discretion in for the president, then the court is the president, okay? If the National Archives says Donald Trump can't really control the documents that are constitutionally entitled to him under the opinion clause of the Constitution, then Deborah Steidel Wall from NARA is the president, okay? That's not how this works. So here, that's pretty clear. Now, 234 years of history support this. Unbroken historical practice. From 1789 until 2023, no prosecutor has ever done that until right now. Why is that? Have we had other bad presidents allegedly before? They say Trump's an insurrectionist. No other president has done anything close to that warrants criminal prosecution? You mean like George Bush lying to an entire country, getting thousands of Americans killed, is not a criminal operation, not criminal insurrection? What about Obama executing American citizens, blowing them up in drone strikes? What about Joe Biden allowing an invasion, allowing foreign individuals to invade our border and insurrect the country, right? We don't know who's in there. So those are a lot of insurrections, right? I mean, we basically turn around and charge everybody with those, I guess. But American history teems with people that passionately believe that they were criminals. John Quincy Adams, he had a corrupt bargain deal with Henry Clay. That was a prime example. They thought that was all criminal. They didn't prosecute anybody. In every such case, the outraged opposing party eventually took power, yet none ever brought charges against the former president based on the exercise of his official duties. Happens, even Trump did this when he was going against Clinton. Remember? You belong in jail. Never prosecuted her, never crossed that threshold, and she was never even president. But they don't care about that decorum. They're so petrified of Trump, they'll do anything. They'll wreck the justice system, shatter the credibility of the FBI, destroy the sanctity of the court. They don't care because they're so petrified of this guy for whatever reason. Now, nor did any state or local prosecutor do the same. In fact, we have a strong historical practice of not exercising that power. There's been a lot of incentive and opportunity to do so, but they just found it now. They say here, presidential immunity from civil suits. We're very familiar with that from the Nixon case. Legislative immunity also supports this idea. In the Johnson case, absolute immunity to members of Congress who were acting within the scope of their duties. Speech and debate immunity resembles presidential immunity, and so on. Judicial immunity also supports this. Now, there are concerns, they say. What happens if a president is suddenly subject to prosecutions by Tishies and Fannies all across America? Well, that's going to be a problem for the presidency. It's going to hamstring the presidency. They're not going to be able to do anything lest Fani wake up and decide, well, I'm going to take out my opponent. No one exercises more sensitive duties than the presidency. And this position requires bold and unhesitating action. And if you just, as the president, are like, am I going to get charged for everything? Like, this is a close call. I need to do a Jack Bauer situation in 24. Beep, 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 beep. And he goes, pull it. And then building 7 goes down or whatever. You know, you have no idea what's happening. So is he going to be subject to criminal charges for that? The president doesn't want to be subject to charges. So they say that would hinder them. The president maybe wouldn't pull building 7, you know, or something. I don't know. So you can see this is the point of this. The president will be under attack as it's happening now. The presidency would be harassed by vexatious actions as well. Everybody would just indict him everywhere you turn. Now, we fast forward through all of that. They say the president is going to suffer similar prosecutions all over the place. But part 2, they give this back to us. They say the indictment also alleges only acts that are within the areola. They're all these acts within the Engeron, all within the outer perimeter, saying given the president's absolute immunity from criminal prosecution, the indictment must also be dismissed. Any acts within the outer perimeter are protected. And as the highest of all posts with the broadest of duties, that means the president warrants the broadest possible immunity that exists. And the outer perimeter is very broad. We have Article 2, which gives the president the executive power to take care that the laws be faithfully executed. Man, that is a broad statement right there. Take care that the laws be faithfully executed. That includes elections, doesn't it? I'd read it that way. Now, it's the nature of the act, not the manner of the act, that determines whether it falls within the scope of immunity. The nature of the act. You can't just say, well, he acted in bad faith or he acted with malice, because obviously you're going to make that claim for everybody. You're just going to turn around and say that guy did it and that guy did it and that guy. Obviously, he's corrupt. So if you were just able to just say, well, he did something criminal because he's corrupt or he acted with bad faith or malice, then every immunity claim would just evaporate like it'd have no teeth to it. And so you can't defeat it by just making that allegation. And for the same reasons here, alleging that Trump's immunity was part of a conspiracy, it doesn't defeat immunity. You don't get to turn around and say it doesn't exist because you make that allegation. Judge Learned Hand often analyze this as well. And so if it's within the outer perimeter, it's good. Saying here, presidential conduct. Now, the other argument they say is that this was Trump's personal conduct. Well, he was campaigning for president. He was self-interested. He wanted to get reelected again. I said, well, that may be true, but there's also an official reason for this. And so if you have these two things side by side, some official obligations, requirements, and some official, personal and official, they say here, because of the unique nature of the presidency, you get one with the other. If you're enforcing federal elections, it might mean that as a consequence of having actual free and fair elections, you win because the people voted for you. Darn it. The fact that it happens to be Trump is the victor doesn't mean, oh, well, I guess this is going to be good for me, so I can't do anything like this. Okay, everything the president does should be both two things. One, great for the country, and as a result, great for the president. That's what we want. If it is great for the president and bad for the country, that's not what we want. Like endless wars in multiple jurisdictions around the globe. So the fact that they happen to coincide with one another doesn't negate the fact that Trump had an obligation on January 6th, as the president of the country still in office, to enforce the rules. They say when these two coexist, Supreme Court has recognized this. They say, yeah, some of it's personal, obviously. For any president, the line between official and personal is elusive and difficult to determine. And the Biden administration also recently elucidated this point. They said in the D.C. circuit, they said as a first-term president, the president is in a sense always a candidate for office. There you go. That's true, isn't it? And it's not the least bit unusual, this is Biden speaking, for first-term presidents to comment on public policy or foreign affairs at campaign events and policy changes by tweet. Yeah, they're commingled, very connected. And so it's not appropriate here to frame this immunity question to say that just because it was good for Trump means it's automatically illegal. No, free and fair elections are good for the country. And so thus, all of the president's speech involved his official acts. Even if you consider the dual character conduct, that's fine. It's still within the outer perimeter of his official responsibilities. Okay, if Trump is going, going to something purely personal or doing something that is purely personal, like the idea would be like Nixon and Watergate, okay? Having people break in to steal records, that's not part of your official responsibilities as a president, right? So that's outside of the perimeter. That's outside of the areola. So if you're behind that, if you're coordinating that or something like that, that is not, you can't even make the argument that that is in your official duty. It is outside. But free and fair elections are coinciding with both. So every act in this falls with inside the outer perimeter. And you know what these are. Making public statements and tweets, obviously, you're allowed to do that. It's free speech. He's the president. Justice Department has talked about this. Supreme Court has emphasized that you're allowed to speak. And so posting tweets on matters of public concern that relate to the administration is within the heartland of his official duties. A tweet is a public statement in a different and more accessible format until Twitter deletes them from you. They say the fact that Trump often communicated through X, through Twitter, is merely a difference of medium, not of function. And that's part of the other reason why they censored him out, is so that we couldn't hear from him. So they censored both sides. Now they say, here, we want to address a different allegation. The district court in Thompson versus Trump recently said that Trump's tweets are not within the outer perimeter of his duties. But they say that's because Thompson was addressing a different set of allegations, which is distinguishable from this case. They say, regardless, their analysis is unpersuasive. Trump's appealing that decision. Trump acknowledges that whatever one thinks of Trump's views on the election, they were plainly matters of public concern. And that analysis should have ended there. In other words, Trump is not obligated to listen to Bill Barr. Bill Barr says, Mr. President, we've investigated this. There's no evidence of electoral fraud anywhere. He says, get bent, okay? You're not the president. I'm the president. Now, you might say that that was bad discretion or bad judgment. I don't think so, because those people were institutionalists who were going to preserve the status quo no matter what. And the president has to acknowledge when people are not good judges of reality, right? And so we've got our opinions on the DOJ. Yeah, they didn't investigate it. Got it. So second, they say Thompson misapplied his own furtherance of a presidential function. And so that is happening all in that case. That case is bad, they say. Talking with the DOJ is part of the president's duties. Obviously, it's the heart of his duties. He runs the DOJ. Hello. Urging his own Justice Department to do more to enforce the laws is an official act of the presidency. Instructing his attorney general to direct his personal attentions of legal concerns is literally the job. And so thus his authority over these agencies means it is a presidential function. It's in the Constitution. Now, meeting with the state officials is also part of Trump's duties. They said, yes, he communicated with state officials. Now, these are the sorts of communications that the DOJ, you'd have them investigate if it had actually investigated this. And so if the president can have the DOJ do that, then the president can do it himself because he is superior to the DOJ. So everything the DOJ can do, Trump can do as well. It is therefore because the power of the DOJ emanates from the presidency and Congress and the Constitution, which dictates the presidential powers. So as noted above, the Election Crimes Branch had an opinion, and the current administration came to the same conclusion. Talking to state officials about their official duties is within the scope of the president's duties. So let me ask you this. Can Biden's DOJ talk to any state officials, or is that interfering with elections? Because they're doing that. We've seen that. They communicate all the time to increase efficiency and to share data about disinformation and misinformation. It's all garbage. So if they're even talking to state officials, that certainly must be an insurrection there as well, right? Now, Thompson came to a different conclusion about this, but theirs is wrong. Thompson's conclusion is just bad. They say a lot of there. But here, the president's view of the public good affects the civil rights of millions of federal voters. That's within his obligation. So they say communicating also with Congress, clearly within the presidential duties. The Constitution assigns to the president extensive roles in the legislative process. Mike Pence was the president of the Senate at the time. And the president has power to veto bills. So he interfaces with Congress all the time. Here, the indictment says that Trump urged Vice President Pence to exercise his election certification authorities and to address concerns. That is literally his job. As the current administration points out, a president acts within the scope of office when he urges members of Congress to act a certain way, even when the president has no constitutional role. That's from a Blossingame amicus brief. Okay, so that's from the government themselves saying that. They also say there's direct historical precedent for a sitting president communicating with members of Congress about election fraud. Here's a good case. President Grant, 1876 election. President Grant talked about the electoral count and the claims of fraud with a member of the U.S. House of Representatives. Wow. Was there a big Fani back then who prosecuted him? Answer, no. That's a new invention. President Grant transmitted to Congress a letter that he got from an observer, a U.S. senator, whom had requested to go to New Orleans and witness the counting of the vote. And President Grant also dispatched federal troops to Louisiana and to Florida to prevent violence while the votes were counted. And he instructed the federal troops to report fraud in the election. Those were presidential acts. Well, that's an interesting one. I didn't know that. Learning some more history here. So President Grant, this comes from the Papers of Ulysses Grant. Scholars Junction, they wrote that. Visited January 8th, 2024. So that's a nice little section there. We've got here, and apparently he wasn't indicted by an illegitimate special counsel. That's strange. Now, allegedly, they say requesting another person to organize contingent electors, that also falls within the president's official duties for two reasons. It's within the outer perimeters. He's got to control, make sure there is a fair election. Part of the fair election is having alternate slates of electors in case the results are rejected. Got a font change here. That's one size a little too small. I want to bump that up a size. But second, as the indictment itself emphasizes, the actions of organizing slates of electors were ancillary and they were preparatory in case it was contingent, in case it did come back down. Acts that are part and parcel of this, including preparatory actions, are immune from liability as well. And so anything here, right, Trump alleging that Trump's presidential acts were part of a criminal conspiracy with bad malice, actual malice in there, is not enough to defeat immunity. And so for the reasons set forth, in addition, the Supremacy Clause also says that the federal Constitution is the supreme law of the land. Here you see it, the supreme law of the land, the Constitution, the laws of the United States. All treaties are the supreme law of the land. Every state is bound. And so this has been found. The Supreme Court has held that states cannot use their criminal law to interfere with the functioning of a government. But that's what they're doing here. And there can be no doubt that the election of the president is connected to the function of the national government. Supremacy Clause case supports that as well. And so for the same reasons, the criminalization of this process is unconstitutional. And Stephen Sado from Georgia, representing Donald Trump, says President Trump's prosecution for alleged acts during his term in office is barred by presidential and supremacy clause immunity. And so accordingly, this motion to dismiss this prosecution brought by Fani should be granted, and all counts in this indictment should be dismissed with prejudice. sent over to Judge Scott McAfee in Georgia as the Georgia prosecution continues. And we'll see what Fani's office says in response to this. We know there is about to be a lot more litigation in this case because we have trial coming up this year, theoretically. We need to get a trial date anchored in, but we're going to see what happens because the election is right around the corner. And so Donald Trump's team says federal supremacy, presidential immunity are what protect him. The federal constitution and the role of the presidency insulate him against hack partisan prosecutors. But Nancy Pelosi, she doesn't really care about that federal constitution or really your right to vote at all. When asked about whether Trump should be booted and be removed from the ballots and removed from this process entirely, which is basically their endgame here, she says it's up to the states. Almost forgot that we have a constitution. Has she even read it, do you think?
So, Madam Speaker, if you believe he engaged in insurrection under the plain meaning of the 14th Amendment, you believe he's ineligible to be president?
Those laws, those are up to the states. They have different laws from state to state. I don't think he should ever have been president. The Constitution. But nonetheless, there is a view of the Constitution in Article 14, Section 3, that he should not be able to run for president. But that's not the point. The point.
So she wants states to just say, you're off, you're off, you're off, you're off. Based on state constitutions or what? It's a free-for-all out there. These people have no idea what they're talking about.
Right now is, that, again, different states have different laws. We don't think in California that it applied in our state. That's what the decision was made here. But anyway, not to go into that because that's very intricate.
What is she talking about? What case was that? California said it didn't apply. We got a ruling out of California because last I heard, the lieutenant governor of California was trying to remove him. Is she drunk again?
Clear is that the American people want us to honor our oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States. Being from Baltimore, I'm proud of the national anthem, and in it, it says, proof through the night that our flag was still there. We have to prove through this campaign in the night that our flag is still there with liberty and justice for all, and not have an acceptance of Confederate flags under Lincoln's dome, with a president sitting in the White House doing nothing to stop the violence. He talks about the big steal as he engages in the big lie.
Okay. Hammered, right? Hammered. All right. So, or just not that bright or something. I don't know what she's talking about, to be honest. She just listed a whole thing off, forgot about the entire Constitution. Well, look, that's not the point. It is the point, Nancy. Your oath is to the Constitution. Hello. What are you talking about? So I'm pretty sure she's drunk. I don't even know what to say. Maybe not. Maybe she's not. Maybe there's something else going on there. I think she's drunk. So here, Donald Trump heard about what's happening. So, of course, Colorado is trying to throw Trump off the ballot. And he responded to this when he was in Iowa. Let's see what he said here.
I have some big things going in there. I just saw the Supreme Court just before I came. I got some beauties today. I had the one and then I had the other. Supreme Court is taking the case from Colorado.
That's right.
You appoint some of these radical left Democrats and they've right from the beginning, you say, we're dead. And the Republican judges want to go out of their way to be fair and unbiased, and even to a point where they hurt you. And I guess it's a different wiring system or something. But all I want is fair. I fought really hard to get 3 very, very good people, and they're great people, very smart people. And I just hope that they're going to be fair because, the other side plays the ref.
All right. They do play the ref. They are setting up the people who are refereeing the elections, like Jena Griswold. She's going to make sure the votes are counted appropriately. Isn't that crazy? So the woman who is out there hitting the media airwaves, as we're about to listen to here, not worried about disenfranchising anybody, is going to tell us that she can be a fair and impartial, partial and neutral arbiter of the election in Colorado. Do you believe that for a second? I don't. Here is what she said when she was even asked about this by, I believe, CNN. This is Jena Griswold, the Colorado Secretary of State, who is very happy that Trump has been officially removed from the ballot, even though his name is officially on the ballot. This is all pending the Supreme Court, so his name is going to go on. But if the Supreme Court reverts this, if the Supreme Court says, yeah, it is the states that can decide this, then even though Trump's name's on the ballot, even though everybody's going to vote for him, they will still disqualify those votes. So you can go in there, fill in the bubble, and there's a possibility right now, I hope it's low, that your vote will not count. That's what these people have done. That's where we're at right now.
And if the Supreme Court rules in favor of the Colorado Supreme Court to remove Trump from the ballot, but his name is still there, what happens then?
Colorado's elections take into account candidates who either drop out of a race when their name is already on the ballot or otherwise unable to be voted on. So in that
Like when you kick them out?
situation, if voters cast a ballot or a vote for someone who is disqualified, we would not be able to count those votes. I think it's
So every person who fills in the bubble, your votes will go right into the garbage. You're welcome. Democracy in America. They're saving democracy.
underlines that how unprecedented this situation is. Usually when we have disqualifications arise, it's not with the president. It's not with candidates running for president, because usually candidates running for president don't engage in insurrection and don't have this crucial constitutional question.
Neither did Trump, crazy eyes. She just made it up, right? They just decided this. We had in Colorado a 5-day trial, which was a joke. Okay. There was no jury. They just admitted a bunch of hearsay evidence. There were no real experts. I mean, there were a couple of like law professors. It was it was wild, right? Everybody kind of goes, okay, that was like a show sham trial. No due process at all. So they just decided. And in fact, the district court judge decided that the 14th Amendment didn't apply. Then it went up. 4 Democrats out of 7, 3 of them who are also Democrats, thought it was nuts, but the other 4 decided this. So, and they were political appointed, Democrats appointed on the Colorado Supreme Court by Democrats. They were Democrats. So they just decided, essentially, 4 people just decided that there was an insurrection based on a show trial that by standard jurisprudence is not legitimate at all. No due process whatsoever.
Facing their candidacy.
Here's what Trump's lawyers are arguing in their filing about whether the 14th Amendment even applies to the former president. They write, to find that Section 3 includes the presidency, one must conclude that the drafters decided to bury the most visible and prominent national office in a catch-all term that includes low-ranking military officers while choosing to explicitly reference presidential electors. I mean, to a lot of people, including many legal...
Yeah, basically what she's referencing is in the insurrection clause, it lists in a list separated by commas the different names. Okay, senators, representatives, people who do this, blah, 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 and then other officers of the law, right? So there's like a hierarchy that you can parse through. Senators, representatives, this official, and it goes down in rank. And so they're saying you just tuck Trump up in there? Like if it meant president, it would have said president, like the prior drafts did or argued. And then they took that out. So why is that, crazy eyes, Jena?
Experts, this doesn't make sense, just common sense. What do you think? Does it hold any merit?
I agree that it doesn't make sense. It does not make sense to allow a president to engage in insurrection and get off
Answer the question.
Free. A president, the person who has arguably the most power in this country, should not be able to do that type of action and run again when every other elected official would be barred from doing so. Donald Trump is basically arguing to the United States Supreme Court that he did not engage in insurrection, but even if he did, it's okay. He can still be president again. I disagree with that.
That's not what he's saying. He's not saying, even if I did commit insurrection, that's okay. I can be president again. That's not the argument. The argument is there was no insurrection. You say there was. There is immunity for things that are borderline, and this is clearly not outside of the border. If it were, he already would have been convicted by the Senate when this was on trial the first time. And he wasn't, Jena.
2 Colorado courts have already found that he did engage in insurrection. I think it's very clear from the actions around January 6th, before and after, his role in that violent insurrection. But regardless of my sentiments, this is a big case in front of the United States Supreme Court. And I do believe that the United States Supreme Court should tell the American people whether a president can engage in insurrection and then again run for that office.
All right, so she's absolutely crazy. You can just see it right there in the eyes. But that's not, she's misinterpreting Trump's argument. I've already belabored that enough. Not going to repeat myself ad nauseum here. But they keep saying, essentially, the argument boils down to the president can do whatever he wants and any criminal charge can happen and there's no consequence for the president and he can't be allowed to run again because I don't like it. Look at those eyes, man. Every time I pause the video. It's incredible. All right, so that's Crazy Eyes Jena over in Colorado. And not real worried about disenfranchising people either. So they're just going to boot 1.3 million people who voted for Trump in the last election off and disenfranchise anybody who's probably switching their vote this time around because the country is in a much worse off position than it was back then. But remember Muriel Bowser, mayor of D.C., the woman who rejected the National Guard? Trump sent a letter. We've read it here many times. Trump sent a letter to her and said, hey, we're a little concerned that there's going to be a lot of people who are showing up on January 6th, you know, because they told you that they were going to do that, which is also amazing. Like the Capitol Hill Police, Metro Police, FBI, Homeland Security, there were 1 million people, so-called, who were going to be reported to come, and they couldn't secure the building of the most important building in the whole world at that time, with most of the U.S. government inside? What do we need any of those agencies for then? Are they just that dumb? Like literally, are they that dumb? All of them? They couldn't figure it out? All right, so one person who had an idea that this might happen was Trump. Hello. He sent a letter to Mayor Muriel Bowser and said, would you like some National Guard here? And she said, no, we can handle it. And back then, this was because they all thought that Trump was going to use the National Guard to like stand up a new government or something, because they're that demented. So when he says, can I help? They say no. When something bad happens because they didn't take his help, they say, how dare you? And here she is again on MSNBC.
In the lead up to this day 3 years ago and what he did on that day, January 6th, do you think he should be barred from any ballots given his actions on January 6th?
Well, I support every state taking very aggressive action to keep him off the ballot. He is undergoing court action across America. And I don't know that we have ever had a situation. Actually, I do know that we've never had a situation where a sitting president could be a convicted felon. And so the uncertainty that people are going to the ballot with is also unprecedented. Is he going to be on the ballot or not? Is he going?
Yeah, and that's by design, by the way. So this is election interference. Okay, when we wake up next year or November this year, and we start looking at the results, if they don't go Trump's way, we are absolutely legitimate in saying they stole the election, because they're doing it right now. They're trying to keep him off the ballot. They're indicting him, and they are trying to cause a national conversation about Trump's legitimacy as a citizen, as a candidate, as somebody who's a felon or not, as somebody who's even on the ballot or not. It is all mucking up the whole election. And it's using, the federal government to do it through Jack Smith. It's using the state governments to do it. And they're all enabling it. So it's going to be very curious. And by the way, when Trump wins, they're going to say the same thing. They're going to have a meltdown even greater than anything they alleged happened on January 6th, which was a little riot.
going to be disqualified? Are people going to vote for someone who's not eligible? And so all of those questions need to be answered before the American people go out to vote. But what I think is also very important is that people don't sit it out. I've heard too many people saying they're going to sit it out. People have to go out and vote. I remember how many of us couldn't believe that he won in the first place. And that's because there were too many people who just didn't think their vote mattered.
Well,
yeah, well, a lot of that going on. A lot of people whose votes didn't matter because our voices were suppressed, because the election deadlines were all rigged and changed, ballot collection, drop-off boxes, signature requirements, all of it was rigged in 2020. And then when people were upset about that because you rigged and censored it and you had CIA involvement in it, then they cause, through their own security negligence, a riot after the FBI are shooting into the crowd, or the Capitol Police are shooting into people's faces with hundreds of undercover individuals there in some capacity, even agents or informants picking up Proud Boys leaders from jail and carting them around. So the whole thing was a setup. Now, they are using it as a pretext to keep Trump off. There was always going to be that by design. And so they're just showing us who they are. Their true colors are here on full display. Donald Trump filing his motion to dismiss Big Fani's RICO case. We'll, of course, continue to cover this trial and all of the other Trump trials, my friends. So if you're out there joining us, thank you for subscribing and for sharing this channel with a friend or family member, inviting them to come and join us. Also, check out our website, robertgovea.com. We got a new shop there. Grab some Watcher gear. It's a great way to support the show. And join us on Locals at watchingthewatchers.locals.com, which is our member-only community. We do live streams in the morning. We do Saturday streams. And so we talk about a lot of other things. If you're looking for a little bit more variety, and if you want to connect with some amazing people, that's the place to do it. And so we'll be back here talking more. Of course, Fani Willis is going to reply to all this. We'll see what she says, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next one. All right, my friends. Now, we're not done yet here. We're going to see what Jack Smith is up to, because Jack Smith, that was just the first segment. We're not done yet. We're just warming up here. Second segment is coming in, and this one involves Jack Smith. Jack Smith submits a response. Donald Trump wanted to hold him in contempt, says Judge Chutkan should schedule an order to show cause, drag his butt into court, and ask him, Jack, why do you keep filing motions? Why do you keep sending in disclosure notices? Why do you keep prosecuting the case when Judge Chutkan said the case is on stay? It's being held in abeyance while the case is on appeal. Well, Jack Smith says, I'm not doing anything wrong. I want this trial to really happen on March 4th, which is when it's already scheduled for. And those dates are being held in abeyance. And he's just keeping the train on the tracks. Jack Smith just keeps working. And Trump says, I can't be in two places at the same time, okay? I'm up here in the Court of Appeals, and by law, this lower level court literally no longer has jurisdiction over the case. So why is Jack Smith continuing to violate Judge Chutkan's order? We read through the full motion from Donald Trump asking Judge Chutkan to be holding Jack Smith in contempt. We covered that in a prior video. Now, this is the response from Jack Smith. A 3-pager, not too long. He says, all right, Judge Chutkan and Donald Trump. They say this is the government's opposition to Trump's motion to hold Jack Smith in contempt and to issue an order to show cause. And the order to show cause is just like a, come to the principal's office, please. Little Robbie, a principal would like to see you. Like, oh, gosh. Go back to the judge. Judge says, what did you do, son? No, I didn't light that on fire. I have no idea who did. I don't know how it got that way. No, I don't know. Ask Timmy. So here, they say here, Jack Smith responding writes, all right, Judge Chutkan. Donald Trump claims that the government intentionally violated your stay order and that we promoted a political agenda by fulfilling, says Jack, our continuing discovery obligations and by voluntarily complying with the otherwise suspended deadlines. And that's nice that they admit that it's suspended. Like, thank you for admitting that. Yes, that's true. They are suspended. But they say that is false. We're not doing that. the government has not violated and never intentionally would violate, because Trump was not happy in the last one. And rightfully so. It's like, what are these guys doing? They're filing motions in limine and all this stuff. Do you want Trump to respond to that? We would never do it. Violate an order of the court. Oh, here we go. And Trump's recycled allegations of partisanship and prosecutorial misconduct remain, here comes your government word, baseless. Everything's baseless. They say Trump's motion for an order to show cause should be denied, and we should not be called to the principal's office. On December 13th, writes Jack, the court, Chutkan, issued an order explaining Trump's pending interlocutory appeal. Okay, he's up at the Court of Appeals challenging the immunity provision, saying that it automatically stays, this is Chutkan writing, automatically stays any further proceedings that would move this case towards trial or impose additional burdens of litigation on the defendant. Okay, so when Jack Smith takes over his 10,000 pages, or let's say 1 million pages, I mean, there's like 14 million pages of discovery, I don't know. When he takes those and puts them in a giant wheelbarrow and dumps them on Trump's front yard, his attorneys say, we're not taking that crap. Get it off my lawn. We don't want it. But Jack Smith keeps dumping it on there. And they're saying, we cannot accept your paperwork because we're on appeal. But they say that that's okay for them. They say for clarity, they also stayed the deadlines and the proceedings as amended. Now, here's what Jack Smith says. And so even though you wrote that says anything that imposes additional burdens of litigation on the defendant, okay, like that's pretty obvious there. What do you think additional disclosure does? Well, you have to read it. So that's a burden of litigation. But here's what Jack says. The government does not understand your order to prohibit either party from voluntarily complying with the pretrial order or to countermand the government's, quote, continuing duty to disclose. So he's like, well, the rules say, oh my gosh, it's hysterical. Jack Smith says, yeah, but the rules say, you're like, oh gosh. Okay, so he cites the federal rules of criminal procedure that the duty to disclose is ongoing, which is a true rule, but it's not relevant here. It's like, yes, Jack, you have an obligation to continue to gather disclosure. And when you know new information, like that Cassidy Hutchinson is allegedly fibbing about certain things, in my opinion, then, and we're going to go through that video tomorrow. We got Cassidy Hutchinson notice of errata going on. So like when you get disclosures that your witnesses are not good, yeah, you have an ongoing duty to disclose that stuff. But that doesn't mean you have a duty to drop the wheelbarrows off on their front yard, okay? But they're citing, it's like grasping at straws, right? Now, before the stay order was issued, says Jack, in a pleading acknowledging that Trump's interlocutory appeal automatically stayed the case, the government informed the court that the government would voluntarily comply with the adjourned deadlines. They say to help ensure that the trial proceeds promptly, because that's what this is all about. If the Court of Appeals, and they will, I think that the Court of Appeals is not going to dismiss Trump's case. They'll send it back down. Trump will then ultimately appeal it to the Supreme Court. And I don't think it's going to come back anywhere close to March. Like this trial is not going to stay for March. But they want it to very badly. So if it did, let's say, for example, hypothetically speaking, Trump loses this current appeal. Oral arguments are coming up tomorrow. We're going to cover those. Be sure that you're subscribed. Oral arguments on this. Let's say court rules against Trump. Trump says, okay, I want the full panel of the entire court. They reject that. Trump says, okay, I'm going to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court says, rejected. That could happen pretty quick. I don't think it's going to, but it could. And if it does, maybe Chutkan says, well, Trump, you had all of this, you have all of these motions, you had all of these discoveries. Yes, they were sitting in your front yard, but you should have read them. And he would say, well, I couldn't have read them or something, something like that. Now here, Jack Smith says, that was my plan. And because the court's subsequent stay order did not forbid this, like you didn't say I couldn't do this, the government did what we said we were going to do. On December 17th, we gave Trump additional discovery, dumped a wheelbarrow on there. December 18th, we disclosed a draft exhibit list. So not even the actual exhibit list, a draft. And on December 27th, we also, the government, filed a motion in limine that we read to exclude certain impermissible evidence. My friends, does that sound like a burden of litigation? Like if you're saying you're on vacation from this case, which you are, you don't have to do anything on it, theoretically, because you're in the Court of Appeals, and somebody keeps sending you emails, okay, you're on vacation, you have a do not disturb on your inbox, and deranged Jack, who's completely illegitimate, according to Ed Meese, former AG, says, hey, Rob, just a notice. Here's some more discovery in the middle on day 1 of vacation. Can you believe that? On day 2, they say, oh, here's a draft exhibit list. You say, what the heck, bro? I'm on vacation. You got my autoresponder yesterday. What are you doing? And then again, he sends in a big substantive motion a week later. A motion in limine. It's like 15 pages. You're like, all right, that's it. We're not friends anymore. So the government steps impose no requirements on Trump. He doesn't have to do anything. He's made clear. He says, I'm not reviewing the discovery. I'm not reviewing the list. He says, Trump's people said this, and this is exactly what I loved about it. We do not accept the productions, and we are not going to review them. So you can send it over, but you're going to have to send it again. And the government has noted that it is not obliged to respond to the motion in limine at this time. So Trump doesn't have to respond right now. So we can file stuff and you don't have to respond. And because the government's actions require no response from Trump, which is not the standard, okay? Do you see that standard here? This is what these sneaky prosecutors do. That's not what Chutkan said. Chutkan didn't issue an order that says, you can do whatever you want as long as Trump is not required to respond. Wrong. It says no additional burdens of litigation. Not this standard. And these are like they know what they're doing here. Because he doesn't respond, it doesn't advance the trial or impose burdens of litigation on the defendant. You have to read the stuff. That's a burden, idiots. And thus do not violate the stay order. Like, this is just dumb. And they know better than this. If Chutkan accepts this, like, I mean, come on. If somebody sends you an email and they say, that's not a burden on you, what do you think? Is that a burden on you? Do you have to open it and look at it and read it? Yeah, it is. The fact that you don't have to respond to it doesn't mean anything. Now, the defendant's argument to the contrary, Trump, it misses the word called requiring additional discovery or briefing. And that would be different to the automatic stay, but nothing here requires any action by Trump. And so Trump fails to explain how mere receipt of discovery that he's not obligated to review, or the early filing of government pleadings to which he does not yet need to respond, how it possibly burdens him. You have to read it. That's the point. So we're not reading it. So stop even bothering us. Okay, the mere fact that we have to even look at it is a burden. You're not allowed to send the emails. Don't file the documents because I have to look at it. You understand that? If you're doing something, Jack, that means I have to analyze it. You don't get to just prosecute your case on your own with Judge Chutkan, you two skipping around the Dewey Meadows, cavorting about insurrections. That's not how, if you file something, I got to know what you're doing. And I got to read it to see that you're not doing sneaky garbage like you're doing. We're watching him try to, like, so now you expect Trump to just not do anything in the case and you just file a bunch of garbage? No, that is a dereliction of duty. The attorney has a responsibility to their client to make sure that this docket is not being mucked up by Jack Smith. And these prosecutors know that too. So they're just dishonest, okay? They're not good people, like you can see it in the writing. The defendant falsely, they say, paints the government's voluntary compliance with the motion is an effort to spread political talking points, which is all true, and this is right, to try him in absentia. Not so. They say that his misconduct allegation, to which the government has responded in our selective and vindictive motion, is baseless. They say it's baseless, and so it merits no further response. They don't even care. We're not even going to respond to it. The motion already addresses it, and Trump's going to raise this stuff up at trial. And what's so infuriating about this is that this isn't Judge Chutkan's courtroom, okay? So it's a rigged jurisdiction. Now, the court has held that there is a substantial public interest, Chutkan writing, in the fair and prompt resolution of this case. And that's why the government intends to comply with its continuing discovery obligations and to voluntarily satisfy the remaining deadlines in the pretrial order. And they're going to just keep going. They're going to keep disclosing the witness list on February 19th. And they're not expecting any additional burdens on Trump at all. This will position the parties in the court when the mandate is returned to resume the pretrial schedule. Gosh, they're the worst, man. These prosecutors make my blood boil. Trump's motion for an order to show cause should be denied by the snakiest of the snakes, man, Thomas Wyndham. Like, they're not idiots, okay? He knows what he's doing in here. This is like a child who's behaving badly. And like, they know they're behaving badly. You know, everybody knows they're behaving badly, but he knows that the parent is in on it. Parent's like cool with it. Super fine with it. Because Judge Chutkan is. So this is the type of technical procedural stuff that's just like, you know better. They know better, and they're doing it because they're spiteful, they're cheaters, and they're liars, okay? They just make stuff up. They don't really care about the actual law. Justice, give me a break. It's not the Department of Justice. It's the Department of Jokers. All right, now, one of the people who made his whole career at the DOJ and now has his whole career being adverse to Donald Trump, literally, has an anti-Trump podcast, shows up hanging out with Inside Jen Psaki on MSNBC's hit show, and Trump called him out, says, you know, all this going on, crooked Joe Biden and the radical left Democrats, together with their minions in the DOJ, are coming after me. That moron's political opponent, like never before in the history of the USA, Crooked Joe is a threat to democracy. They are setting a horrible precedent for the future of our country. Deranged Jack and Lisa, Monaco. Is it a 6-year statute of limitations or just 5 years? Ask your slimeball boss, Andrew Weissmann, what your next move will be. Does Crooked Joe Biden know or understand what you are doing to our failing nation? This is election interference. And so Andrew Weissmann went on MSNBC, joined Inside Jen Psaki, where they had a conversation about MSNBC type stuff. And this is what it sounded like when Andrew Weissmann was responding to Donald Trump. Psaki says, Donald Trump called you out. This is going to be great for your Twitter account. What do you have to say about this, Andy?
Can't let you go without asking you, because I'm sure you saw that the former president called you Jack Smith's slimeball boss. Anyone who knows you thinks that's insane, or anyone who watches you.
I watch, but I don't think so.
I wanted to give you an opportunity to respond to that.
Sure. I don't think there's anything that I can say that hasn't just been better said by the Maine Secretary of State about these kinds of ad hominem attacks. I would sort of separate that into two things. One is the sort of use of adjectives and adverbs. That is not legal argument. That is not a factual argument, any more than if you say...
Like what? Danger to democracy? Insurrectionist? We're going to be dealing with the end of America, like all that type of stuff. It's all platitudes. It's all just nonsense, right?
The election was stolen. You need to have facts.
Yeah, we do.
Adjectives and adverbs is not a way of arguing, especially for someone who had been the leader of the free world, let alone anyone else. And I think that's really important. On the substance, which is to suggest that somehow I am Jack Smith's boss, again, where are the facts of that? I have had zero communications with Jack Smith or his team. They are independent.
No, they're not.
Both within the Department of Justice and certainly for a legal analyst on MSNBC.
Okay, so I'm sure that there is no conversation there. I probably believe that. I don't know that they have direct communication with each other, but look at these two little smirks here. Look at these two little lovebirds, man. They really love these segments together for some reason. I don't know what's going on there, but anyways, they're always having these conversations, and Weissmann is responding to Trump. He's using bad language. It's like, do you know what network you're on? They just call names all day. That's their entire show. Is Donald Trump is an insurrectionist. Donald Trump is Hitler. Donald Trump's a death to democracy. Blah, blah, blah. It's nonstop. In fact, here's one guy who was over there on CNN. He says a lot of the same stuff. I regard him as a threat to democracy. By how? By what? By causing an insurrection. Okay, and then what does that mean? By interfering with the peaceful transfer of power. You say, well, what does that mean? And they just go on. They can't, they're like a broken record.
But since today is January 6th, 3 years after the attack on the Capitol, I'm just curious, Mr. Secretary, do you view Donald Trump as a threat to American democracy?
Well, first
Great
of all,
question.
good to be with you, Jim. It is a tragic day in our nation's history. And yes, I do regard him as a threat to democracy.
Okay.
Democracy as we know it, our institutions, our political culture, all those things that make America great, and have defined us as, the oldest democracy on this planet.
But since
Okay, so just a bunch of dumb platitudes, right? That's all it is. So Andrew Weissmann and Mark Esper and the rest of them, they just keep on the litany. Now we'll listen to these two real quick, Raskin and Schiff. Now they're pushing some interesting new arguments.
Donald Trump's lawyers
This one came in from Raskin, and I wanted to share this with you. Raskin is now trying to impute motive to Trump. So now he's saying that Trump caused one of the dates of one of the protesters to change. He said, don't go protest on the 20th during the inauguration. Come back and protest during January 6th. And Raskin is going to say that is evidence of motive, right? That is indicia of a guilty mind, a guilty mens rea.
For just a mere riot, Donald Trump would not have gotten the Women for America First to change the permit for their protest from January 20th, where they were planning to protest at President Biden's inauguration, to January 6th. He told them it wasn't over yet. He was the one who, for the first time in American history...
Because it wasn't over yet. They were still counting, and there was going to be challenges to the vote. So it was not over yet. So that's all true. And what does that have to do with anything? I mean, did he send the women group to go in and seize power?
He went out as a president and galvanized protest at the peaceful transfer of power at exactly that time at 1 p.m. So it's very hard to see this as a rally that got out of hand, just a mere riot, the kind of thing that happens every now and then. It was targeted for a very strategic political purpose at Congress, at the peaceful transfer of power.
Now, they keep saying that phrase. You hear that phrase a lot. And I asked myself, where does that phrase come from? They just kind of inserted it into the 14th Amendment. It's like insurrection and the peaceful transfer of power. They need some other magnifier to make this thing actually matter. And so rather than calling it a riot, it's got to be a riot. It's got to be an insurrection because of the peaceful transfer of power. So it's like indicia that they're looking for to just add in. It's an ingredient that they have to add into the pot. And so now you can see they're going to try to move dates around. So Trump said, come protest on this day. Therefore, that is insurrection on January 6th. And I still don't really know what their end theory is on this. What was going to happen with the riot? And I mean this genuine. Was the podium guy, the lectern guy, going to take the lectern and that was it? What was going to be the end of the peaceful transfer of power in their minds that led to Trump running the country? I still haven't really heard them articulate that. So the riot leads to a bunch of dead senators and then Trump just installs himself or something. I don't know where it was going to go, but maybe they'll explain it to us one time. But as this goes up to the Supreme Court, we've got Shifty Schiff saying Clarence Thomas needs to recuse himself, needs to get off this case, because this is ultimately where a lot of this is going to end up. Okay, even the Jack Smith case, immunity, double jeopardy, maybe even this appeal stuff, and whether they can continue the case during the appeal. Maybe that'll go up on appeal. We've got a lot of stuff to appeal here. I think it's all going to end up at the Supreme Court. Until we get some clarity on it, this is where the new battleground will be. Because you already see the Democrats are circling the wagons to try to criticize and condemn Scotus, in particular, Clarence Thomas, which is extremely racist.
Well, I have to say, if you're skeptical about this court, there's good reason to be skeptical. They've shown they're not a conservative court. They're not a court that feels bound by precedent. They're a reactionary court. They're a partisan court. And here, one of the justices in particular, the one you mentioned, Justice Thomas, has a very personal, close family member, a spouse, who had a role in trying to overturn the election. There is unquestionably a conflict here and an appearance of impropriety should he sit on that case. But I have to say, I expect that's what he'll do, because he doesn't seem particularly concerned about avoiding conflicts of interest, the appearance of conflicts of interest. Neither does Alito. And so there is, I think, room for concern and skepticism. The Constitution here is very clear. Well, I have to say, if
they
you're
just
skeptical
want him
about
gone no matter what. Clarence Thomas, they'd like to get him off, appoint someone else. You heard him also say Alito in there too, right? So it's not just Thomas. They don't like the court because they are not in charge of it. And so that's going to be the new line of attack from Shifty Schiff as the Jack Smith case continues to evolve and work its way up to the Supreme Court, I think is where it's going to land. We're going to be here continuing to cover, my friends. Thank you for liking this video. Thank you for subscribing wherever you're watching it. And thanks for checking out robertgovea.com. We've got all of the PDFs are uploaded there. All of the mind maps are accessible there. You can sign up for our daily newsletter. So all of these segments are just bundled up and delivered to your inbox at robertgovea.com. We'll look forward to seeing you there and back here on the next one. And we got one final segment on the day before we wrap it up, and we're sticking with January 6th. And this one is involving Ashli Babbitt. May she rest in peace. Ashli Babbitt's estate now suing the U.S. government for wrongful death and a bunch of other negligence claims, all stemming from January 6th. Now, we're going to go through the lawsuit, the filing here, which was spearheaded by our friends at Judicial Watch, and then we'll hear some reaction to some of the January 6th stuff, because MSNBC is hanging out with actors like Michael Fanoni, who, in my opinion, made up a bunch of stuff about January 6th, and pulling out the tear. We'll listen to him. Mike Pence says, hold on a minute, America. Just trust the FBI. Take them at their word. Trump is responding to the J6ers, calling them hostages, and Elise Stefanik is supporting that phrase as well. And so we're going to get into all of it. Well, let's start off with the lawsuit itself. Ashli Babbitt's estate sues the U.S. federal government in this filing. The estate of Ashli Babbitt, Aaron Babbitt, and others versus the United States of America. Now, they filed this in the Southern District of California, and the people spearheading this are our friends at Judicial Watch. Now, here's what they say. They say the parties, as we know, the estate of Ashli Babbitt, she was shot and killed on January 6th. Aaron Babbitt is her husband, and the government is the defendant in this case. Now, anytime you sue the government, it is a real difficult thing to do. You have to submit all these notice of claims and blah, blah, blah. It's a lot. So they give us this section saying that we've done all of that. We've timely satisfied the exhaustion requirements within 2 years. Specifically, Ashli was shot and killed by a Capitol police officer on January 6th. We filled out stupid Form 95. We sent it via fax. We submitted a supplement. We submitted a second supplement, all via certified mail. The Capitol Police has failed to make a final disposition of our claims, right? So you got a certain amount of time before you can, if you miss the window, it's the statute of limitations. Basically, you can't bring your claim. So their failure to make a determination has caused us to file this lawsuit. Now, in this lawsuit, there's some interesting things about the officer and some false reporting from this guy, Lieutenant Michael Byrd, the man who actually did the shooting and then was paraded around by the media as the savior of America. Here are the facts. They say on January 6th, Air Force veteran Ashli Babbitt, I like that, age 35, was shot and killed by Lieutenant Michael Byrd. The bullet pierced Ashli in her left anterior shoulder, perforated her left brachial plexus, trachea, upper lobe of the right lung, second anterior rib, landed in the right anterior shoulder. Ashli fell backwards, landed back on the marble floor. Video recordings show her alive and conscious, writhing uncontrollably immediately after the shooting, and it was brutal. Ashli remained conscious for several minutes and longer after being shot by Lieutenant Byrd. She was in extreme pain, suffering, mental anguish, intense fear as she slipped into pre-terminal unconsciousness. The autopsy report identified the cause of death as a gunshot wound to the shoulder. Onset minutes. The fact that Ashli was alive and conscious in extreme pain and suffering is documented in videos. Furthermore, nothing about the wound track described in the autopsy report would be expected to result in immediate death or instantaneous loss of consciousness, and Ashli's lungs contained blood, further confirming that she was alive and breathing after the shot. Ashli was pronounced dead at the hospital, 3:15 p.m. Medical examiner determined the manner of death, homicide. They tell us Ashli had been living in San Diego, California, where she and her husband, Aaron, operated a successful pool business. And shout out to my pool friends, man. I used to clean pools. A lot of cleaning pools and build them. Ashli traveled alone from San Diego to Washington to attend Women for America, the Save America rally, the next morning at the Ellipse. Trump was going to be there along with other speakers. Ashli loved her country, wanted to show her support for Trump. Now, she did not go to Washington as part of a group for any unlawful purpose. She was there to exercise her God-given American liberties and freedoms. After the rally, when she was there, Ashli, like many others, walked to the Capitol, 1.5 miles. 2 undercover Metro police officers followed close behind Ashli. They were all over the place. As Ashli climbed the stairs to the West Terrace, Ashli entered the Capitol on the Senate side long after others had already done so. Once inside, Ashli encountered a female Capitol police officer. Okay, so she was in there, and we've seen video of this. I've not seen this video of this, but we've seen video like this, who directed her to walk south towards the House side. Come on in, waving them in. Ashli complied, walking alone through the Capitol and ultimately arriving at the outside main door to the House chamber where demonstrators gathered. From there, Ashli walked by herself east, along the hallway outside the House chamber, then turned south, reaching the hallway outside the Speaker's lobby. Now, the Speaker's lobby is a long rectangular corridor behind or at the rear of the House chamber that features portraits of past loser speakers. Behind the Speaker's lobby is the retiring room, an adjoining corridor the size and shape where members and invited guests can relax between votes and do cocaine. The Speaker's lobby has entranceways both at the ends of the corridor and features rectangular double doors with glass panels, matching side lights, and a glass transoms that fills both to the lobby. Just outside each entranceway is a small, narrow hallway with a stairwell that leads down to the first floor. Okay, so here's an image of that. Tells us, and you can see this looks like the Speaker's lobby at the top. The doors looks like they just kind of have hinges on them. Looks like this is a stairwell railing. That glass looks broken. That's what we see. Now, the shooting occurred at the east entrance to the Speaker's lobby. And this is the photo of the east entrance to the Speaker's lobby. Okay, so this is where the shooting was. And, Ashli was basically stepping up into this window frame, I believe, and Lieutenant Byrd, the shooter, was like poking around this corner right here, shot her right here, either through one of these 2 windows, and then she fell down. Let's see what it tells us. The shooting occurred now after demonstrators filled the hallway outside the lobby, and they were all in this location. And she was kind of laying on the ground right in this location right here on the floor. After demonstrators filled the hallway outside the lobby, 2 individuals in the crowded and tightly packed hallway, they struck and dislodged the glass panels in the door and the right door side light. So that's gone. That's gone. Lieutenant Byrd, who is a U.S. Capitol Police commander and was the incident commander for the House, the incident commander, shot Ashli on sight. She raised herself into the opening of the right door side light. Okay, so she was coming in, it sounds like this one maybe. The right door side light. Byrd later confessed, he admits, I shot Ashli before seeing her hands, before assessing her intentions, or by even identifying her as female. Just shot her right away. Ashli was unarmed. Her hands were up in the air, empty, in plain view of Byrd and other officers. Ashli posed no threat to the safety of anyone. Not one member of Congress was even in the lobby, which was guarded by multiple armed police officers. There was nobody inside. Additional armed police officers were in the hallway outside the lobby and on the adjoining stairway. Ashli could not have even seen Lieutenant Byrd, who was positioned far to Ashli's left on the opposite side of the doors, near an opening to the retiring room, a distance 15 feet and an angle of 160 degrees out. Sergeant Timothy Lively, who's one of the armed officers guarding the lobby doors, later told officials who are investigating the shooting, says, I saw him. There was no way that woman would have seen that. Okay, I saw him. There was no way Ashli would have seen that. So she's just climbing through and just gets executed. Just this dude is hanging back over here, tucked way away over here. She's climbing through this side. And he just pokes out, and you see the video, just pokes out, pop, just hits her once, boom, she's done. She didn't see him. He didn't identify himself. Lieutenant Byrd, not even in uniform, did not identify himself as a police officer or otherwise make his presence known to Ashli. Didn't say, stop or I shoot, hands up, nothing. Did not give Ashli any warnings or command before shooting her dead. At 2:45, or within 1 minute after shooting Ashli, Lieutenant Byrd made the call. So he pops out, shoots her, she's on the ground, dying. 2:45, he gets on the radio. He says, we got shots fired in the lobby. We got shots fired in the lobby of the House chamber. Shots are being fired at us, and we're prepared to fire back at them. We have guns drawn. Please don't leave that end. Don't leave that end. What? Lieutenant Byrd made that call? We got shots fired in the lobby, his. We got shots fired in the lobby, his. Shots are being fired at us. Where did that come from? Who shot at him? Has anybody seen that person? And we're prepared to fire back at them. Uh-oh. So he's now lying that he just got shot at. So we have guns drawn. Please don't leave that end. Don't leave that end. Now, approximately 35 seconds later, Lieutenant Byrd made another radio call. He says, okay, 405B, we got an injured person. We got an injured person here. I believe that person was shot. In fact, no shots were fired at Lieutenant Byrd. No shots were fired at fellow officers. The only shot fired in this whole stinking thing was a single shot of Lieutenant Byrd at Ashli Babbitt, who she didn't even see him. And no warnings, nothing. He heard the loud noise of the gunshot. He saw her fall backwards from the window frame. He knew that he shot her. And he says, we're being shot at. No, you're not, Lieutenant Byrd. They say the facts speak the truth. Ashli was ambushed. When she was shot by Lieutenant Byrd, multiple witnesses at the scene, they just yelled, you just murdered her, because you did. Now, Lieutenant Byrd was never charged or disciplined on any of this. Never punished, never disciplined at all. Didn't get the Derek Chauvin treatment. Did he? No. He got paraded around. He was doing interviews. I had to do what I had to do to save America. Okay. Nobody even looked into these fake radio calls where this dude lied about being shot at, literally lied. And I believe that person was shot. Yeah, no kidding. You did it. Shots are being fired at us, and we're prepared to fire back at them. We're shooting. That's probably where that was going, okay? Let's pause on that one, right? Shots are being fired at us, and we're what's the SH? It's probably what he did not want to say, because he didn't know how to report this. We're shooting back. Okay, we're prepared to fire back. We have guns drawn. You already shot, man. You already shot. And you're changing your story in real time. I believe that person was shot. Yeah, you shot and killed her, dude. Yeah, that was you. So they say, here's the first claim. Intentional shooting and killing of Ashli Babbitt. Okay, civil claim, but assault and battery, basically murder. They say on January 6th, Lieutenant Byrd, by his own admissions, intentionally shot her. At the time of the shooting, he was a government employee. Now, she was fatally injured as a result of the shooting. The shooting was not privileged. It had no legal justification, and it was non-consensual. She's dead now. So he is liable for that. Now, we also have a claim for negligence under count 2, saying that the U.S. Capitol Police has rules for ensuring integrity of their profession and a regulation on the safe use of firearms. And both of those apply to Lieutenant Byrd. Okay, there are rules of engagement. There is a standard of care. Each directive is consistent with a reasonably prudent police officer, and both directives were in effect. And additionally, talking about negligence, Lieutenant Byrd was also designated, quote, the incident commander for the House. The U.S. Capitol Police, like most law enforcement agencies, has adopted the NIMS system, NIMS, the National Incident Management System, making it a key part of their policies. NIMS is a standardized on-scene emergency management system that they use. It requires an agency to identify an incident commander. Everyone is designated to help support the incident commander. Byrd's role as the incident commander bears substantially on the standards of care that apply to his conduct. Now, when Byrd shot and killed Ashli, he breached multiple standards of care, dropped below. One, how about the safe use of a firearm? The perception and the assessment of imminent threats. The use of force levels like de-escalation and de-escalation of force. The perception and the assessment of facts. The use of warnings, in which there were none. Firing backdrops, which he didn't care about. Obtaining timely and appropriate medical aid, among other breaches that were identified in the discovery. Now, had Lieutenant Byrd actually followed these standards, he would not have actually fired, and Ashli would still be alive today. Now, they tell us that the Capitol's use of force policy, they say, unless an exigent circumstance justifies immediate actions, officers do not employ less than lethal force. Now, here are the different directives from the Capitol Police, and you can see them here. Sworn officers, sworn employees, don't discharge a firearm unless you have to. Don't withdraw it unless you need to. To avoid unintentional discharge, don't, okay, all the directives. Now, Byrd was required to adhere to these things. Don't use his firearm, holster it until a reasonably prudent officer would do it, and all the things. But Byrd breached these standards of care. Why? Well, he unholstered his firearm before he even saw Ashli, so he was ready to go. Therefore, before any expected, prudent, or lawful discharge was appropriate. He also failed to maintain his unholstered weapon at a low ready, instead of pointing his firearm at no fewer, and instead he pointed his firearm at no fewer than 3 people. So he was just kind of waving it around, pointing it at everybody until he decided to execute Ashli. And he also pointed it at 7 uniformed officers who were behind Ashli. Okay, so there were cops on the other side of her. 7 uniformed officers positioned near her in the hallway. So why did he need to shoot and kill her if there were a bunch of cops there? Holding his finger inside the trigger guard, no trigger discipline for this guy. Pathetic. And tapping his finger on and off the trigger for at least 14 seconds before he saw and shot Ashli. So he was just trigger ready to go. Just like, let me go, let me go, let me go. Now there's an assessment, right? But you have to make an assessment. You got to be a reasonably prudent police officer before you just shoot and kill people. And he breached his standard of care. He did not assess the appropriateness of shooting her. Byrd admitted when he was doing his interviews, he went on with Lester Holt from NBC Nightly News. Byrd said, question to him, did you know what happened there? He said, I had no clue about the person that he shot. I had no clue. I had no clue. Wild. And says, it did not matter whether the person was armed. I didn't care. I didn't even know it was female until hours way later that night. He's just shooting off, just popping off, man. Says, instead of diligently assessing the appropriateness of actually using deadly force, he didn't care, just shot and killed her. Well, and then lied about it. We're under attack. Lieutenant Byrd negligently, if not recklessly, assessed all persons inside the Capitol as an imminent danger to the house, even though the house was empty and there were cops everywhere. He said, when the announcement came that the Capitol had been breached, my rules of engagement never changed, is what he said. Now, he also failed to de-escalate a bunch of Capitol Police directives, telling them that you have to do that. There's compliance techniques, there's contact controls, there's cooperative controls. Like, and I understand, you know, for a lay person who's maybe not a police officer, who doesn't have all of this training and all of this heightened standard of care, you might be in there and you go, I saw January 6th. It was bedlam in there. There was madness all over the place. And so the cop had to protect the house. Okay. As we saw, right? The house was empty. Cops were right behind Ashli Babbitt. She was totally unarmed. This dude was out there just looking for somebody to execute. Then he lied about it. They're not supposed to behave that way. Okay. They're supposed to go through all this other stuff, which is why all of the other Capitol Police and all of the other people who were responding to this didn't shoot and kill anybody else. Just this dude. So they're supposed to, you know, have defensive tactics. Then it's supposed to go up. Cooperative controls, contact controls, compliance techniques, defensive techniques. Then you get to lethal force. And he just kind of skipped all that other stuff. They say Byrd breached this care. He just jumped right to level 5. He just unholstered his firearm. That's it. Pointed it at Ashli and everybody else who was behind her. And then shot. It was aimed. Look at this. His firearm was also aimed in the direction of 4 officers from the Capitol Police's elite and well-armed containment and emergency response team. And they were all behind her, okay? As soon as she went down, the cops were like, oh, great. They had just reached the hallway after ascending the stairway. 3 other uniformed Capitol Police officers were also descending the same stairwell. A House Sergeant at Arms employee and other federal law enforcement officials were all in the hallway. He just wanted to shoot somebody. Like, cops were everywhere. Lieutenant Byrd also breached his standard of care. He saw Ashli in the window. He failed to apply only the level of force that a reasonably prudent police officer would do at the time. He failed to remain flexible. He did not, for example, holster his firearm. He did not even let Ashli know that he was there. He did not identify himself as a police officer. He did not warn Ashli of the consequences of coming through the doors. Nor did Byrd attempt any less than lethal means to apprehend Ashli. A factor that's especially significant given that at least 4 other armed officers were in the lobby with Lieutenant Byrd to assist him in stopping and detaining or arresting Ashli. And there were at least 7 other armed officers who were either in the hallway with Ashli or in the stairwell leading up to the hallway. Indeed, Lieutenant Byrd negligently, if not recklessly, believed that rather than applying the only level of force that was reasonable, it was his job to shoot her. He said, I hope and prayed no one tried to enter through those doors. He also added, no one else attempted to enter that hall because he shot and killed her. Just jumped right up to level 5. Whatever. So we see here, Lieutenant Byrd was also negligent in his assessment of the facts. Byrd erroneously believed when he was there as incident commander that there were approximately 60 to 80 people in the House chamber when he shot and killed Ashli. And he said, and that was just members and their staff. All right. He's like, I have to protect Congress. There's 60 to 80 Congress people and their families in there. But a reasonably prudent officer in Lieutenant Byrd's position would have been aware that, in fact, only 6 members who chose not to evacuate, including the 5 members with law enforcement or military backgrounds and 1 undefeated mixed martial arts champion. Who is that dude? We have an undefeated mixed martial arts champion? Okay, so 5 people are like, this is no big deal, okay? You're all freaking out about nothing. The rest of the Congress people are like putting on the, you know, the Ziploc bags, like breathing out of the, you know, the clear air. Remained in the House floor. Okay, other guys, this is nothing. All of them being guarded by armed officers. A reasonably prudent officer would have known that. Although 12 to 15 additional House members were in the House gallery, these individuals were 1 level above the House floor, a location that could not be accessed from this level, and they were also guarded by armed officers. So 60 to 80 was actually like 6, so he's off by a lot. And Byrd also erroneously believed that members with mobility issues were also there at the time. He said, we had a few members that are, I don't want to say disabled or, have limitations as far as being able to run or move fast. Like Jerry Nadler, he carries around like 30 to 45 pounds of fecal matter in his diaper. He's been carrying it with him for the last 40 years in Congress. Of some of those individuals who were in the lobby with me at this time of this incident. But a reasonably prudent officer would have been aware that there were, in fact, no members, disabled or otherwise, who were in the lobby at the time of the shooting. Byrd also erroneously believed that any breach of the Speaker's house was significant. He said, if they get through that door, they're in the House chamber and they're on members of Congress. But an actual smart officer would have known. The demonstrators were nowhere near the House members. They were all already evacuated. And an officer who knew better would have been aware that the East lobby doors were nearly impassable because he and others had already erected a barricade of heavy furniture at the doors. And also the windows in the East lobby were narrow and only one person could fit in through them at a time. So a person passing through the window would have to also climb through the barricade. And there were 5 armed officers there. And saying that Byrd, he should have known that there were 4 armed officers. And in this exchange, several additional armed officers were located at the West lobby doors. More armed officers were on the House floor and in the gallery, and additional police units had been called to Byrd's location in the East lobby, only 3 minutes before Byrd fired his weapon. Only 3 minutes before Byrd, there was a radio call. The crowd at the House main door is heading around the glass doors and on the rear now of the chambers. You need all units to go there and hold the glass. Now, a reasonable officer would have known to get that equipment, but he was not aware of the phone call. I guess because his cell phone was off, his radio was off, his equipment was not on. Now, listen to this. Lieutenant Byrd also erroneously believed and acted on a false radio call and or false reports of shots fired on the House floor occurring before he left the House floor and moved to the other room. He said there were reports of there was reports of shots fired through the House main door onto the floor of the chamber. Of course that changes your posture. I drew my weapon, took a tactical defensive stance to protect myself. But a reasonable officer would have known their report was false. That was glass breaking, not shots fired. And you would not have relied on that call without investigation because Sergeant Paul McKenna canceled the call almost immediately after it was made. He said, nope, sorry, those were not shots fired. That was glass breaking. Reissued the shots fire call, creating substantial uncertainty about the call's accuracy. So he would clear that up. Now, Byrd could talk to McKenna and Officer Reggie Tyson and Congressman Troy Niels, who is a career law enforcement official. They all could have determined, and they all did determine, that it was glass breaking. There was glass on the floor. It wasn't a shot fired. Byrd also said, I was trapped because we were barricaded. He said, once we were barricaded, we were essentially trapped where we were. There was no way to retreat, no other way to get out because we had did both sides of that corridor, so you're essentially trapped. A reasonably prudent officer would have been aware that only the doors on the east had been barricaded. The doors on the west end, which were used to evacuate people, had not been barricaded and they were open. He also erroneously believed that there were no officers present there on the other side of the door. He said, I had no knowledge that those officers were there, that he almost shot into. I had no visual or communication with them, but he still shot into them. There was no call over the radio explaining to me that those officers were there, but a reasonable officer would have just, looked. There were 3 officers that had been ordered to guard the door. They had their backs to the doors until just moments before the shooting. They were standing there. Then they moved to the adjacent wall and began ascending the stairs after the other CERT officers came to relieve them. All 3 officers were in uniform. One of them was wearing a ball cap. Now, also present was a sergeant-at-arms employee with 20 years experience, and he just shot right into them. He also thought that he was the last line of defense. He says, as an officer, you rely on our CERT, which is, our containment team. And if they don't make it there, you're the last line of defense, and it's appropriate action based on the circumstances. They say no. There were 3 other officers there. This guy didn't need to shoot and kill her. He also believed that there were hundreds of people in the hallways. He says the chants got louder. I couldn't make out what they were saying, but it sounded like hundreds of people outside the door. They would say, no, you would have known that. It's too small to hold hundreds of people. Hello. One of the officers, Officer Christopher Lanciano, he estimated the crowd size between 15 and 20, not hundreds. Now, while the second officer estimated a crowd size between 60 and 80, video of the demonstration shows it's closer to 15 to 20, okay? So this guy said 60 to 80. He couldn't get it either. But Byrd says hundreds. Byrd also believed the demonstrators caused more property damage than was actually the case. Only the windows had been broken by demonstrators Zachary Alam and Chad Jones, both of whom were clearly visible to him because he pointed the gun at them right before he shot and killed Ashli. Now, he said that he shot her to save the lives of Congress and my fellow officers, saying she was a threat. They say, no, come on. A reasonable officer would know. Ashli was unarmed, small in stature, did not pose a threat of imminent death or injury to anybody simply by climbing through a window. He said, I could not fully see her hands or backpacks or whatever, but I found out that she did not have a weapon. Shot her anyways. Byrd, who was not in uniform, didn't warn her. Failure to warn. Didn't even give her a warning. Was not in uniform, was wearing a face mask, breached this standard of care. He didn't give Ashli any verbal commands, didn't give her any warning of consequences. Nothing explicit at all. Just shot and killed her right out of the dark. But Byrd did not give Ashli any commands or warnings. Any commands could have been directed at Alam and Jones. They were striking the doors. He admitted it's possible that his warning was inadequate. He says, it is possible that my warning was inadequate. He said the people on the other side could not hear him, nor could people see him speaking. He said, admitted this, I know it was difficult for anyone to see me verbally speaking because we were wearing the masks because of COVID. He also negligently just fired into the crowd, right? Bunch of people there, negligently failed to administer aid. After shooting her, in fact, instead of immediately calling for medical aid, Byrd, after he shot her, he waited 1 minute and then he used his radio to make a false report of shots fired and just made it up. He then waited another 35 seconds to report an injured person was shot, not by him. The second call did not report the critical information that could have saved her life. In fact, those details were not broadcast until 2:47 p.m., much later. Saying 3 minutes after the shooting, when the following radio call was made by someone else who's not Byrd. Someone else, an unknown male, says, don't know if this went out over the radio yet. Which is like sick, right? She's like laying there bleeding out. Anybody catch this person dying here, bleeding out on the floor? Anybody catch this one? Don't know if this went out over the radio. We've got one civilian down with a gunshot wound to the chest. They're on the east side of the House lobby area. If we can have responding medical units respond from the west side of the House lobby, we need it ASAP. She's dying. Lieutenant Byrd is still thinking he's being shot at, probably. Now, as a direct result of this negligence, Ashli died. So we've got other negligence. Looks like these claims are being brought against these people. Now, they say all of these people had arrest authority, and all of these officers, Lively, Yetter, Lanciano, were ordered to stand guard. They were talking in front of the doors. Seeing Ashli, the officers formed a line in front of the doors. Lively was standing in the center of the doorframe. Officer Yetter was on the right, Lanciano on the left. Independent journalist Tyler Hansen caught up, followed Ashli into the hallway. Within 2 minutes, about 30 demonstrators filled the hallway. Zachary made his way to the lobby doors, reached over the officers, began striking the doors with the panels of glass. Zachary cracked the glass. Sergeant Lively and others stood there and did nothing to control or stop him. At one point, Zachary Alam was directly next to Ashli as Alam struck the door. Now, video recordings show that Ashli, an Air Force veteran, who had served as a military police officer and guarded high-value military assets and had high-level national security officials and dignitaries under her protection, captured terrorists and even nuclear weapons, was plainly distressed by Alam's unrestrained conduct. Standing directly in front of Sergeant Lively, Officer Yetter, and Officer Lanciano, Ashli Babbitt pleaded with the officers, "Do something!" Shouting as loud as she could, she screamed, "Call some effing help!" But instead of controlling or de-escalating or stopping Alam, Lively, Officer, and Lanciano, they moved away from the doors. They were standing right there. Wasn't that interesting in that video? And stood along the walls to the doors. They then began exiting the hallways, passing Ashli, and as they did so, new officers came on the scene, Robb, Smith, Sykes, and Brown. The first third officer was to reach the hallway was only a few steps from Ashli. When Lively and other officers moved to the wall, Chad Jones joined Alam in striking the doors. Ashli was in the narrow, crowded hallway. Alam dislodged the glass panel to the right door, then moved to his right, striking and dislodging the glass panel to the right, through the right door side light. So that guy cracks the glass. Lieutenant Byrd pops out, boom, shoots and kills Ashli moments later. Ashli was directly behind Alam in the tightly packed space. So Jones struck and dislodged the glass panel, and then they removed the panel and placed it on the floor. Now, all these cops were there. Okay, Lively was there, Yetter, Lanciano, the CERT officers, Robb, Smith, Sykes, Browns, they're all on scene. None of them did anything, though, to stop Alam or Jones. I don't know why. None of them called for backup. They were all down with it. Gandalf, a 20-year veteran of the Capitol Police, was also there, and at one point was directly behind Ashli. Nobody did anything to try to control the situation. Lively, Yetter, and Lanciano, they say they breached their duties for not only disobeying the order to guard the doors, they abandoned their post, they didn't do anything to control or de-escalate the situation, and they failed to act and call for backup or anything. They're just standing around, like indulging in it. Like they got an order to let them in and do what they wanted. We watched it. So as a direct result of, they took Jacob Chansley around and paraded him around, opened doors for him and stuff. So they were entrapping these people. Now, as a direct result of these and other breaches, Ashli Babbitt was shot and killed, and so all of those other officers are liable for their involvement. Now, take a look at this. Negligent supervision. Okay, the Capitol Police couldn't even supervise their bad police officers, and they're liable for that. Saying the Capitol Police and the Police Board, and ultimately Congress, as Lieutenant Byrd's employers, they should have known that Lieutenant Byrd was a problem and that this guy was prone to behave in dangerous or otherwise incompetent manners. And he owed Ashli a duty of care despite his incompetence. How do we know he's incompetent? Well, less than 2 years before January 6, on February 25th, 2019, Lieutenant Byrd left his loaded Glock 22, the very same firearm that he used to shoot and kill Ashli Babbitt, he left it in the bathroom in the Capitol Visitor Center, the complex. That was in 2019. They probably promoted him. I'm surprised he's not like teaching at Harvard or something. So he leaves his loaded firearm in the Visitor Center in Congress where there are representatives. Okay, you go through security so that you can't bring weapons into the Capitol so that you don't shoot and kill someone in there like this guy did. Like in particular, a congressperson. You do everything you can to keep weapons out of the building, and this guy just goes and takes a dump and drops it there on the floor. Lieutenant Byrd's loaded Glock was discovered during a routine security sweep later the same day. About 15,000 to 20,000 people pass through the Capitol Visitor Center, which serves as the main entrance for visitors into the Capitol during its peak season. Lawmakers and staff charged with oversight of the Capitol Police were not even made aware of the incident until a reporter contacted them. So Lieutenant Byrd's police powers, also, this guy's totally incompetent. Not only is he, dumping his weapons off at the toilet, Lieutenant Byrd, his police powers had also been revoked on more than one occasion prior to January 6th for failing to meet or complete semi-annual firearms qualification requirements. The guy can't even shoot. In fact, Lieutenant Byrd had a reputation among his peers for not being a good shot. Under the range management system, an officer who fails to meet firearm requirements is given 1 week of remedial training. If the officer still fails to qualify after remedial training, police powers are then revoked until the officer then qualifies. But Byrd's police powers were also revoked for prior off-duty shooting in a stolen moving vehicle where the occupants were teenagers or juveniles. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. What, are you serious on this one? Is this serious? The stolen vehicle was Lieutenant Byrd's car. His police powers were revoked. There was an off-duty shooting. Someone stole his car. The occupants were teenagers or juveniles, and it was Byrd's car. He fired multiple shots at the fleeing vehicle in a suburban area. He just starts popping off. Stray bullets from Byrd's firearm struck the sides of homes. Oh my gosh. What on earth? This dude just runs out like, "Wah!" Like he's in a movie. And there are homes shot by this dude. I can't even believe this. An official investigation found that Byrd's use of force was not justified. No kidding. Yeah, no kidding. Lester Holt didn't tell us about that one, did he? He left that one out of his little hagiography report. Lieutenant Byrd also had one prior use of force matter that was originally sustained by the Capitol Police. He was found not guilty by the Disciplinary Review Board, so they'll leave that one out. But on information and belief, there are additional incidents in his background that show the Capitol Police knew or should have known that this guy, would behave in a dangerous or otherwise incompetent manner. Incredible. Capitol Police, ultimately Congress, they should have known about it. They shouldn't hire incompetent morons to, positions that they're not qualified to be in. As a direct result of these things, Ashli Babbitt is now dead. Saying here, they also want to go after the Professional Responsibility Board. In his nightly news interview, Lieutenant Byrd stated that he was just following his training in connection with the shooting. Well, that's curious, because Lieutenant Byrd's use of force training was obviously deficient then, if you say that he was doing his training. The areas in which he was deficient are these: threat analysis, situational awareness, and others. And he's not following the applicable standards. Officers must also know the use of force policy. They have semi-annual qualifications for this. He's also supposed to be properly trained on First Amendment demos, capitals, security, lockdowns. He's also supposed to know how to use the incident management system. He's also supposed to be able to answer his radio and make post-shooting radio calls. But none of that happened here. All of these cops violated an order to guard their position. This guy, once the position was abandoned, shot her through the side light. Lively told investigators, one of these cops said, I grapple with this, I grapple if I should have stayed. But this officer, Officer Smith, says, I was thinking, why the F did they leave? Why did they leave? Sergeant Lively, Yetter, and Laciano knew or should have known that there was another team in the hallway, but they demonstrate total incompetence of all these people, saying they breached their duty of care, and as a direct result, Ashli is now dead. We also have massive negligence. And, of course, the big one, wrongful death. Now, as a direct result of all of this negligence, Ashli Babbitt's husband, the estate, they have suffered the loss of Ashli. Her services, her companionship, her projected future income. He's had pain. He's had suffering. He's had emotional distress. He's lost his spouse and suffered serious damages. And this is a cognizable claim under DC's Wrongful Death Act. And so, what are they asking for? In their prayer for relief, Ashli Babbitt's estate says that the American government is responsible for $30 million of damages, plus interests and other penalties that accrue under the law. And I hope they get it, every penny of it. Signed here by Robert Patrick Sticht and Paul J. Orfandis, attorneys for the Ashli Babbitt estate. And this was even more incompetent than I was even possibly imagining. I mean, I had no idea that this guy not only left his gun in the dumpster toilet, he's also shooting off like he's some maniac in a Hollywood film, just firing off at teenagers who stole his car from him. He's the incident commander. Maybe that's why they made him the incident commander. Nancy Pelosi's like, okay, who is the dumbest cop that we have here? Like, oh, definitely Lieutenant Byrd. The guy can't shoot for anything. He can't hit the broadside of a barn. Perfect. Make him the incident commander so that something goes wrong. And of course it did. So he shot and killed a woman. Now, all of that being said, right now, his fellow partner, another Capitol Hill police officer, is Michael Fanoni, who in my opinion is just the biggest faker, one of the biggest fakers in this whole thing. It's hard to keep track. There's a lot of fakers here. But listen, watch this moment of tears, shedding of tears from MSNBC in memory of January 6th.
I'm going to try to get through this. Thank you for what you did 3 years ago today.
I'm surprised Fanoni's not like laughing. Like, bro, are you nuts? What are you doing? Calm down.
Please tell me your thoughts on this third anniversary.
We are still in the midst of the same fight that began on January 6th, 2021. And we have a lot at stake in this country. And I think that it deserves every American's attention.
Okay. More meaninglessness and just empty tears. It's actually kind of hysterical. But anyways, crying their eyes out over there at MSNBC. Now, Mike Pence was out. He says, just trust the FBI, everybody. Okay, FBI is looking out for you. And the people who had the biggest security failure in, I don't know, maybe American history. I mean, they couldn't even secure the Capitol building when they were counting the votes. FBI, HSI, Capitol Police, Metro Police, Sergeant at Arms, they rejected the National Guard. Like the whole country couldn't figure it out. It's either because they are totally incompetent, which is possible, or they are complicit in having this happen. And I think it's the latter, actually. I don't think that they are that dumb. I think that they wanted this to happen. They enabled it to happen. Mike Pence asked some questions about it, but the FBI told him to trust them, and so he is.
You know, I've seen the director of the FBI repeatedly assure the American people that the FBI were not the instigators of the riot that occurred on January 6th. And frankly, I'm very grateful for the efforts of the FBI to bring nearly 1,000 people to justice who ransacked our Capitol and did violence against police officers that day. But you're right. We've been assured again and again.
Very glad that he's gone.
That it was not the case. And I just must tell you, having been there that day, I mean, to see people literally breaking windows, ransacking the Capitol, it just infuriated me.
Yeah.
I remember thinking.
Yeah, you should talk to the FBI about it, Mike.
You know, not this, not here, not at the United States Capitol. And I believe everyone that conducted that riot at the Capitol needs to be held to the fullest extent of the law. I'm pleased that many have, but I've never been given any information. I've heard the many repeated assurances from the FBI that they were not involved, and I take them at their word.
Where is he? He's at Tel Aviv, Israel, talking about our insurrection over there from across the world. Okay, so that's just incredible. What a total disaster that guy's turned into. Now, here is Donald Trump. He says, you know, These people are hostages. They are being prosecuted and being attacked by a political opponent in this country. Is absolutely right. They are being held as political hostages. Ray Epps got 6 months for being one of the most violent offenders on the FBI's watch list. We have people who are rotting away for decades. It's reprehensible. There's a double standard here that exists. Even if you want to say, look, let's at least punish the protesters, punish them with a diversion deal or something, like they gave all of the rioters back during the Summer of Love. It's reprehensible. We have two standards. Here is Trump.
What they've done, and they ought to, you know what they ought to do? They ought to release the J6 hostages. They've suffered enough. They ought to release them. I call them hostages. Some people call them prisoners. I call them hostages. Release the J6 hostages, Joe. Release them, Joe. You can do it real easy, Joe. This guy, what he's done to people.
Yeah, it's disgusting what Joe has done. And he's now making it the centerpiece of his campaign. But we have some stones from some Republicans out there. Remember, many Republicans, they don't want to talk about this. It's actually been quite pathetic how far they are all running away from the January 6th stuff. It's like, don't you guys understand? It's not about January 6th. It's about the federal government weaponizing a political party or prosecuting a political party using the strong arm of the government to do it. And so Elise is out here, even though she voted for FISA and other things, talking good.
Is so important because the American people, they deserve transparency and accountability.
A lot to unpack there. Of course, the White House has said that Hunter Biden is acting unilaterally on the issue of election integrity, though. As you know, Trump took his case to court more than 60 times that there was fraud. He didn't win. But I want to get back to this key question. Do you still think it was a tragic day? Do you think that the people who stormed the Capitol should be held responsible to the full extent of the law?
I have concerns about the treatment of January 6 hostages. I have concerns. We have a role in Congress of oversight over our treatments of prisoners. And I believe that we're seeing the weaponization of the federal government against not just President Trump, but we're seeing it against conservatives. We're seeing it against Catholics. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so proud to serve on the Select Committee on the Weaponization of the Government, because the American people want answers. They want transparency, and they understand that as you look across this country, there seems to be two sets of rules. If your last name is Clinton or it's Biden, you get to live by a different set of rules than if you're an everyday patriotic American. I've been clear, Kristen, if you go back and play the full speech I gave on the House floor, I condemn the violence, just like I condemn the violence of the BLM riots, but I also importantly stood for election integrity and security of our elections, which if we don't have that, we do not have a democracy. So the real threat to our democracy is these baseless witch hunt investigations and lawsuits against President Trump, whether it's Tish James or whether we see in the D.C. Circuit Court. And that is undemocratic, and it's shredding our Constitution. And you know who agrees with me, Kristen? The American people. That's why President Trump is winning in poll after poll against Joe Biden.
The Justice Department has indicted a number of top-name Democrats as well, including the president's son, twice. So, I mean, a lot of critics would argue that.
So that's fair? Or something like that? All right, so that's Kristen. No, it's Justice Department is legitimate. Why? Because they got Menendez and Hunter? Okay, that's thank you for those. So, and by the way, the DOJ tried to rig the Hunter case. So don't give me that garbage. The president's son botched that. The DOJ had the whole thing ready to go. All he had to do was say yes to the judge. The whole thing would have been over. But he's so stupid and cocained out that he couldn't even get the plea deal done. It was incredible. So they tried to rig it. They were not going to prosecute him until the whistleblowers came out and started bringing some pressure upon it. But that's beside the point. Elise Stefanik crushing that interview. Don't fall into their stupid frames about 60 courts, whatever. Wrong. What's happening now is these political hostages are being treated as prisoners. And so Elise Stefanik in the House supporting our J6ers, Ashli Babbitt's estate suing the federal government for wrongful death. And we are going to continue to cover this. Now, the government, of course, will respond. We'll see if Ashli gets $30 million. Seems a little bit light to me, but we'll be here, of course, covering all the J6 stuff. And so thank you for joining us as we do. Thank you for subscribing and following along. We're going to be covering the Trump stuff, the January 6th case stuff here. And I appreciate you sharing this channel with a friend or family member. You know, YouTube thinks that we're not authoritative because we show the documents on the screen. They'd rather have some moron from MSNBC just regurgitate stuff for you. They actually amplify their content. So they don't amplify us at all. In fact, they suppress us. So your shares are super important and very critical. One great way to share, go over to robertgovea.com, sign up for our daily newsletter. When the emails come in, forward those to everybody that you've ever met in your life. Forward the emails. Just say, got to save America. Forward, forward, forward. Great way to save this country. Sign up for the newsletter, robertgovea.com. But we're going to be here continuing to cover this, my friends. Thank you for joining us as we do. We'll see you back here on the next one. All right, my friends, we covered some good ground in the House. Ashli Babbitt getting her day in court. We're looking forward to that. Jack Smith admitting that he's violating the order. Doesn't care. Just going to keep filing stuff, and we'll see what Judge Chutkan says about that. And Donald Trump moving to dismiss Big Fani's Georgia case, claiming federal supremacy and immunity. And so, of course, my friends, now it is time to hear from you. We are going over, as soon as we're done here, we're probably going to have to open up another thread to watchingthewatchers.locals.com for our members only after party. We'll see what we can get through. Our website, robertgovea.com. And of course, don't forget to grab your private internet access VPN. The link is down in the description below at piavpn.com/Robert. Protect your internets out there, my friends. All right, and let's see who is in the House on this lovely day. We're going to go a little fast. Sam O is here. What's up, Sam O? As a new member, no question on that, but very nice to see you, Sam O. Thank you for the lovely dono today. Let's see what else we've got. Oh, that's a nice puppy. Well, that's a very nice puppy. Hey, Pinecone. What's up, Pinecone? Gifted one member to Roxanne X2 in the House. Good to see you, Pinecone, on that one. Hey, Glocky McLockface says, Rob, you know, the Nuremberg trials are famous because of the Nazi leadership getting tried, but they actually prosecuted all the judges in Germany who ruled the Nazi regime could do all the things. Sterilization, concentration camps, and murder, kind of like how the DC judiciary is letting and ruling to let the Democrats, SS, and the FBI do the fascist Democrat dirty work. Yeah, the communists just gobble up all the levers of power and then just go hog wild into it. Glocky says the Democrats are literally the definition of fascism. And don't forget, they also collude with Facebook and Google to swing elections. Glocky shared this one. Benito Mussolini from Joe Biden in the House. We've got this. This is the meme. Fascism should more appropriately be called corporatism because it is a merger of state and corporate power. Benito Mussolini. Democrats are literally fascists. Gloria B, been a member for 10 months, a baby and then some, says, thanks for all you do. Best chat group ever. We have the best chat. 100%, without any debate. Anybody says otherwise, they can fight me over it. Glocky says, this X thread about Pence is pretty interesting. Looks like a good one. Thanks for sending that, Glocky. It's a little long for a comment here, but thank you for sharing that for those who are interested. NY says, when immunity is conferred in its many ways, where does intent come in? Is this Jack Smithism? He deserves sanctions for briefing and charging bizarre theories. Gloria B's in the House, bringing in 5 new membos. Thank you, Gloria B. Steven's here, Tom G, Karen A, Brian D, and Gawain is joining us, courtesy of Gloria B. Gloria, thank you for being here. Thanks for being a membo, and thanks for bringing in new membos. Hey, Don McGee is coming in as a supporter. And so for our YouTube friends, don't forget to grab the Telegram link. So navigate on the YouTube channel over to the community tab, grab the Telegram link, and we'll see you there in the after party. Same thing for you, Jan. Grab the Telegram link. Otherwise, we'll see you back here in the morning for our members only stream in the morning. BH Williams says, isn't painted face Pelosi taking the position of Southern Democrats regarding slavery? States' rights? They haven't changed in 150 years. Well, I think Pelosi's been around for 150 years. Yeah, so she was probably down there, in South Carolina, fighting for secession back in the day. Here, good to see you, BH. Knox is here. Happy Monday, y'all. Pelosi sounded like one of those people who shows up drunk to a meeting and wants to stand up and give a speech, like the star of the show. She sounded a little drunk there. And I know some people are just saying, well, Rob, she's just old, okay? Just be nice. I don't think so. I think she's drunk. This old guy says Pelosi sounds like Biden. Blah, 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 blah. It was pretty marbly in the mouth. Glocky says, the fact that these people aren't scared of Trump voters after they remove him from the ballot, target conservative parents, and badmouth them every day proves that all their talk of the right wing being violent is bull. Because if they were violent, they would be scared to be doing all these things. Yeah, that's kind of a good point, Glocky. It's like the right is just kind of sitting here and taking it. It's like we don't even have Congress people that are upset. You know, most Congress people are like, you know, kind of like Mike Pence, like, well, January 6th was very bad. Nobody's really even to say anything. Like they won't even talk about it. That's how pathetic most of the Republican Party is. Says this isn't rocket science. A sitting president cannot insurrect his own office. And by the way, J6 isn't the transfer of power. The 20th is. I'm shocked none of Trump's lawyers have mentioned that. I think they've brought it up saying that he can't insurrect himself, in other words, right? It's his own government. We got Flash River says, Rob, the U.S., we the people, should file a class action suit against Al Gore for creating the internet superhighway, which has brought all this chaos upon the entire world. You're right. I try to warn my colleges to let me create a virus to undo all the Y2K fixes in 1999 to bring the world back to caveman days. The world would be better off. Yeah, man, we could go back to the 90s and like bring back Nirvana, you know, stuff like that. Gosh, the world was a lot simpler back then. Good to see you, Flash. Jack Mack is over on the YouTube, says, I'm so tired of hearing the word insurrection. There was no insurrection. I agree. Yeah, they first of all, they charged Trump with that. He was acquitted of that. And nobody's been charged with insurrection at all. The closest thing is seditious conspiracy, which again is nothing. The desperate need for that to be true to destroy Trump doesn't miraculously make it true. It's beyond getting old at this point. It is just old. It's not even in the process. It's just like, you're now worn. The argument here. Yeah, it's annoying for sure. And they just keep saying it because they really need it. It's like you want it to be true. If you say it enough, eventually they'll believe it. I do think they believe that. I mean, I think Liz Cheney probably wakes up in cold sweats like, insurrection, you know, kind of a thing. Rocky Water, mint segment and take regarding the segment reading the Reverend Jack Smith filing. Well, thank you, Rocky. Yeah, that was an interesting one. It's like we can just do whatever we want because you're not burdened about it. It's like, no, we have to participate in what you're doing. It's not a free-for-all because you say it is. Crash says, Rob, Chutkan will agree wholeheartedly with Jack Smith in his rebuttal to Trump's motion and hold Jack Smith in contempt. I think you're probably right about that. Birds of a feather flock together, as they say. Tara Rayners on the YouTube says, you cannot cause an insurrection on your own government, and the peaceful transfer of power for those not effing stupid was on January 20th. It's rage-inducing, Tara. Yeah, so I guess that's the end game. It's like, okay, so what happens? The guy gets the podium. Trump reaches across, grabs the guy's clavicle, drives the car over to the Capitol building. And what? Like he just stands there and all of the military leaders and everybody just goes, oh, I guess he's in charge now. It's like, I don't understand the end game, but they don't either. Crash says, the reality is that all these Dems live in a different country than we do. Let them go. We need to begin to remonstrate at the top of our lungs that we don't live in that country. This old guy says, Schiff is a proven liar. I have absolutely no time for him. Totally censured. And I forgot to mention that today. Just wanted you to know where I stand. Thank you, this old guy. He is censured. I forgot to mention that. He's been censured. I mean, what a loser. Tara says, Trump should sign an executive order day one banning soy. There's too much estrogen in the male population. Justice Roberts has already weighed in on the 14th Amendment regarding the president. It's probably not a bad idea, Tara. Says, I meant male and I was unsure of the date of Roberts' opinions. Thank you for that, Tara. I appreciate that one. Hey, William says, thank you to all the membership gift givers from William L. Been a membo for 4 months. Very nice to see you, William. And another one from Tara says, after she punched the vandal, I think she was going to block the passage, and unfortunately, her murderer made sure she can never say. So evil. Rest in peace, Ashli. It's a great comment, Tara. Certainly not worthy of an execution from Lieutenant Byrd, who can't even keep his gun in his pants. 1917 Beamer says nothing will happen to Byrd. He's their hero. Also, Congress is sure dragging their feet, which there's no doubt about that either. All right, so locals, friends, we're going to open up another thread here in a second because we're just about out of time. And so we're going to fire that up right now. And so we're going to get booted out, and then we'll have a new thread where we'll follow up. So let's see when that ends. We've got 1917 Beamer. We got BH Williams says, why isn't this also a suit against Lieutenant Byrd? 42 U.S. Code, Section 1983. Good question, BH. I'm not sure why. Good question. I don't know. Good to see you. Ryan Patrick's in the house. Says, smash that like button. Nice to see you, Ryan. C. Wolf is here. Says, I'm a former first responder and I've done lots of NIMS IX training. An incident commander is supposed to stay in position to maintain oversight and management of the scene. His actions were entirely inappropriate on that factor alone. We got this. Says, Rob, this is breaking right now. Says here, filing alleges improper relationship between Fulton County DA and a top Trump prosecutor. Whoa! So that guy is in a romantic relationship? We've already talked about this. What was that guy's name? Like Dade or something? Oh, so that guy, this guy who's doing most of the prosecutions, apparently Fani has been getting a little bit, Fani with this guy. So that is curious indeed. We're going to keep an eye on that. Maybe we'll talk about that tomorrow. This one says, breaking news, filing alleges improper relationship between Fulton DA and top Trump prosecutor. Woo, that's going to be fun. We'll probably get to that one tomorrow. Let's see what else. We got Fred Pedamonte says, it was the third window from the left. There are 3 video angles. And this one is from Knox Bierman. It's a Democrat, MMA undefeated. Look at this guy. That's pretty, okay. Who is Sharice Davids? Oh, it's a congresswoman. One of the first openly gay members of Congress to represent Kansas. She stuck around. Not good for her. Single mother, 20 years in the Army. Her passion is martial arts. She loved Bruce Lee, wear a black belt. Interesting. All right. So tough lady. All right. So thank you for that. I'm surprised it's a Democrat, but it's, anyways, we'll leave that there. Thanks, Knox, for that one. Hey, Husky Mom says, Rob, caught the replay of this morning's show. You were talking about Sasha Baker. This is my Husky, Sasha Baker. I can assure you she had no knowledge of his hospitalization as she was here at home partaking in serenading the neighborhood in the song of her people. Serenading the neighborhood in the song of her people. That's beautiful, Husky Mom. And look at this real handsome Sasha. A real beautiful girl. The goodest of all the girls in the whole neighborhood. Our friend Sasha Baker. What a beautiful puppy. And a beautiful song. No doubt about it. Let's see what else. We got Glocky says, holy moly, Fani could be facing federal RICO charges from Glocky McGlock. What's going on over there in Georgia? We'll have to keep our eyes out on that, Glocky. B-Man, we'll hit that in the after party. We'll pull up your link in the after party. B-Man says, according to Chief's son, his second in command arranged a lot of what happened, and now she's police chief at UC Berkeley in Pelosi's district and has never been questioned. Incredible. From B-Man in the house. I did not know that. Second, is that, that's not Yogananda. Isn't she still there? Interesting, B-Man. Thanks for that. Pinot Shay's helicopter tour says racist murderer, Capitol Police dude, Michael Byrd. Felt like he wanted to shoot someone, as per usual. This one's from Rocky. says, shout out, as always, to Judicial Watch. They do great work. Knox says, okay, so these Capitol Police are like mall cops who went nuts when something was a little confusing. Pelosi had to know that. Yeah, she's like, oh, they'll all go crazy. Just let a couple rioters in, they'll all melt down. They did. Bad Poet on YouTube says, I can only understand the terror of the J6 politicians. If they have been betraying the American people for years, yeah, time to panic in the guilty mind. Yeah, they're all sitting there like, oh man, we are in big trouble. This is not good. They're coming to get us. That's why they're so freaked. Lady Ice says, I still have not seen the footage of Ashli's shooting that shows the Antifa members who broke the glass on the door and pushed her into the opening. And then once she was shot, they faded back down the stairs, changing out of the MAGA gear on the way. Yeah, it's a good comment, Lady Ice. This one from Vicky also is a supporter. Welcome aboard, Vicky, as our newest supporter. And Pinochet's helicopter tours is in the house. Says, for those who are unfamiliar with 5-generation warfare, please understand the federal government is trying to bait the public into action. We cannot take the bait. I couldn't agree more. I feel like they're trying to instigate something through the prosecutions of Trump, actually. Through the removal, like they want somebody to do something. And they'll probably make it happen, and they'll try to blame it on the right. Even if something happens, we'll just leave that. We got A Boy Misunderstood. Says RMBL, everything wrong with the Capitol riots in 889 Angeles. A Boy Misunderstood. A membo for 6 months in the House, and it's great to see you. A Boy Misunderstood. We got CF Rob says the 14th Amendment disqualification clause has a remedy. Congress can remove this. Also, Section 5 says Congress enforces all the above. So it's not the Secretary of State or anyone else to attend to. And so that's exactly right, Rob. I agree. And they, what's interesting is they point to Congress, which is what they just keep pointing to Congress, which means Congress has the say, I believe. Now, let's see what else. Wow. Okay. So here's another one. Wow. Fulton County DA is allegedly sleeping with the special counsel she appointed. This is from our friend Technofog. His earnings stemming from her appointment have paid for both of them to travel on the Norwegian and the Royal Caribbean cruise lines. Here, the Caribbean, the special prosecutor has purchased tickets for both of them to travel on the Norwegian and Royal Caribbean cruise. Traveling together to such places like Washington and New York City might make sense. But what work could they be doing traveling to the Royal Caribbean cruise line? The district attorney also, they have cohabitated in some form or fashion at a location owned by neither of them. Oh, they're going to the seedy motels. Oh my gosh. Sources close to both the special prosecutor and the DA have confirmed they had an ongoing personal relationship during the pendency of her divorce proceedings. Or of his divorce proceedings. And according to these sources, the personal relationship between the district attorney and the special prosecutor began before this prosecution was initiated and before the DA appointed the special prosecutor. Wow. So Big Fani is making bang bang with her special prosecutor. Oh my gosh. And we followed this story months ago when we were talking about the money. He was getting paid a lot of money, I think a lot. We made a whole video on it. Just incredible. So Big Fani, that special prosecutor's, getting down on that Fani, I guess, is what's going on. Special counsel Fani action. Oh, gross. All right. So that's interesting that's happening over there. Let's say hello to what happened on the X platform. Oh gosh. We got, let's see. This one, I could have sworn you did lots of work on the Danchenko trial, like you did the Sussman trial, but I can't find it anywhere. Not like we did Sussman. We did not do Danchenko like we did Sussman. Sussman, we got the transcripts. We read that every day. But Danchenko, not as intense, Daryl. That was a separate type of activity. Now, what's going on with our locals, friends? It looks like the chat is not working. I don't know. Let me see here. I don't know. I'll have to check that out later. Okay. So we got Newsmind says, yes, tomorrow. Okay, cool. This is great. Thank you for linking that up. We've got the chat. I'm sorry, tomorrow, the live stream, 9:30 Eastern, 7:30 our time, 9:30 oral arguments on the immunity claim. So we'll definitely see what happened there tomorrow. Hey, Fred's over there. Fred says, breaking news. James Pepper is in the house, says people should remember it was Joe Biden who attacked Thomas in his hearing to become a justice. They hate each other. Howler Dude says, wow, Super Cop emptied a clip at his own car and hit neighborhood homes. Yeah, this looks great, man. We got some good stuff. And this is the motion to disqualify Georgia. Amazing. Okay, Dark Side Digital. George is in the house. Travis Stewart, VW Bus Girls is here. Yeah, where is the video? Yeah, there's a lot of video of the Ashli Babbitt stuff. I just didn't play it, obviously, because she dies. But some good comments there on the X, my friends. And if you want to follow us over there, you can do that. Rob Govea, ESQ, is the place to go. But my friends, that is going to be it for us on the day. We are going over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com. I'm going to try to figure out if the chat is working over there. But we are done here. Watchingthewatchers.locals.com is our members only platform. It's where we do members only streams in the morning. We already had a stream this morning. We do Saturday shows. We did a stream on Saturday. And so we'd love it if you joined us. It's a great way to support our work and meet some amazing people. Watchingthewatchers.locals.com, our website, so you can get any of the PDFs that we just read through today. RobertGovea.com. And you can also sign up for our newsletter. And I'd really appreciate it if you did that and then shared that with your friends or family members so that they know about the work we're doing. If you need a VPN, got a good one for you. Private internet access. Link is down in the description below to check that out. As we wrap up, want to thank the mods and the meme smiths for modding down the fort for us, keeping things nice and orderly. Our friends, Vienticus Prime. We got K Bean in the house, Just Cause, Playin' Hooky, Ronnie Cole, our friend Zulu, Beyond Geo, Zach Nichols in the house, John Allen, Janek, Dog Digger, and our friend Donut Mind Me, and our friend Zach and Donut clipping away for us. Thank you both, gentlemen. We've got Geegum Geegum, Nathan and 810, and Sleepy Dog Lee as our meme smiths in the house. But that, my friends, is it for us on this beautiful, beautiful Monday. We have a full week ahead. We've got Trump's immunity oral arguments tomorrow. We've got Tishy's and the civil fraud trial closing arguments on Thursday. And some other stuff is going to happen, no doubt about it. And so we are going to be back here tomorrow to get into it all again. And we need to see you right back here so that together, with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful day, my friends, and a beautiful night. We'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.